One back in the creepy continent of Nasu, the year was 1424. That was the year when everything started going downhill for those fighting in the Great Stallion. War, as the battle raged, the weak ones were turned into absolute dust. Because nobody could stand up to him, the brutal demon king just kept marching forward, leaving total despair in his wake, but right in the middle of this mess, a legendary hero somehow rises up to save the day. He protects the helpless folks on this struggling continent, but wait, none of this is even real. This is actually just a video game called Paradiso. Inside this pretty cool virtual world, your main goal is to crush that wicked Demon King and take the crown for yourself. Now, we finally meet our main character, an ordinary working guy who comes home after a long day. With absolutely nothing better to do than grind this game, he is a fully grown man, but he spends his entire life grinding virtual quests. He manages his territories, levels up, and explores every corner. Because he played so much, he basically became a legendary veteran in the community. Our guy grinded this game after work for 10 years straight, becoming a famous power blogger on the game forums. He spent so much energy on this game that his body literally gave out. Even the local news reported it in shock who actually dies from gaming, but do not worry just. Yet the main character suddenly wakes up screaming. He wonders if he truly was doomed to suffer the sad fate of dying as a single guy at the age of 30, but strangely enough, he wakes up inside a massive, heavy body. Right next to him, a lovely blue-haired girl watches with a nervous look. Worried about him, she asks if he just had a terrible nightmare. She even calls him her lord. Confused, he quickly glances around the room first to the left and then to the right. He is in a highly luxurious room, way fancier than anything he could ever afford. After a quiet moment, the big guy finally turns to the pretty girl, asking who she is and where they are. The young maid is completely shocked. She stares at him with a confused look, but he just stares right back with the exact same expression. They stand there frozen for a while. Finally getting out of bed, he looks at himself in the large mirror, comparing his reflection to the game's stats floating before him. He is suffering from severe obesity, a condition he has had for 10 years. And because of this, his total life expectancy is 20 years shorter. Even our main character is totally stunned by this. Seriously, how out of shape do you have to be to lose 20 years of your life? On top of that, his other stats are completely terrible. Unable to stand for long, he decides to sit his heavy body down, but the wooden chair groans under his massive weight, practically about to split in half. As he stares deeply into the mirror, he slowly begins to remember his past life. He used to be a man named Shine Tai Pong, but now he is reborn as a completely greedy and massive noble named Jard. For some reason, our main character instantly recognizes the interface this world is using. He immediately realizes that he has ended up inside the game Paradiso. Except now, this is his actual reality. Now that he understands the situation, he knows that a useless character like Jard is destined to die very soon, and since he spent 10 long years doing absolutely nothing but playing this game, he knows exactly what is coming. In 10 years, a brutal war will break out. Even worse, in 5 years, the world goes completely downhill. Famine, drought, and natural disasters will strike way before the fighting starts. Since survival means fighting for food, things are bound to get brutal. A completely useless, minor noble like him is guaranteed to die immediately. Infuriated, he wonders how someone like Jard was never mentioned before. He is basically a walking encyclopedia, yet Jard is a total mystery. Honestly, it hurts. He at least deserved to be a handsome guy. Right in the middle of his loud complaining, the chair finally snaps. It completely breaks, dropping him flat on his back. After a brief moment of silence on the floor, he remembers something. He recalls that young Jard was actually supposed to become quite handsome. That tiny spark of hope is exactly what he needs to get motivated. He slowly pulls himself up, ready to give it another shot. He is absolutely convinced that his only real problem is losing weight. Armed with future knowledge, he plans to turn everything to his advantage. By exploiting every glitch and secret from the game, he will survive. He finally stands up, fully determined to make his game knowledge count. After all, he did not waste 10 years of his life just to fail now. With his overwhelming knowledge of the game, he can change any situation. Catching his breath between heavy pants, a wild plan starts forming. He decides his best move is to somehow conquer and rule this entire world. Becoming the absolute king of this land is his new ultimate goal. Meanwhile, in another room, the helpful maid hums happily while dusting. She cleans with absolute joy, wanting to make things comfortable for the Lord. Even though the lazy master has not stepped outside his bedroom in ages. Suddenly, the entire building begins to shake violently, completely catching her off guard. Frozen in place, she can only stand there in utter disbelief. Suddenly, the Lord bursts through the door, yelling in a complete panic. He is a sweaty, panting mess. She quickly replies, eager to help. But he ignores her, immediately tearing the study apart to search for something. He frantically rummages through every single corner of the room. Finally, Hayes steps in and gently asks what he is looking for. He gasps out that he needs the valuable keepsake his father left. Specifically, the precious heirloom Jard's father left behind before passing away. He silently grumbles about how carelessly such an incredibly important item was stored away. Hayes is completely unfazed. She calmly opens a nearby drawer and pulls it out. She presents it to him, leaving him completely baffled because he literally just checked there. Grabbing her tiny hands with his giant paws, he lets out a sigh. He is extremely relieved it was not lost and thanks her for finding it. Thrilled by his gratitude, Hayes happily asks if he needs anything else. She is completely ready to do absolutely whatever her giant master desires next. But instead of giving her a task, Jard smiles and ushers her out. He quickly shuts the door, leaving her standing in the hallway in complete confusion. Her duster in hand, she stands in total silence, wondering what just happened. She instantly senses that something is different about her young lord. Turning back to the door, she realizes his sluggish vibe is completely gone. Instead, her usually lazy boss is suddenly bursting with fresh, vibrant energy. Overjoyed that he is finally doing something, she races down the hallway. She cannot wait to start cleaning. Meanwhile, back in the study, Jard sighs. Looking down at the glowing artifact, he knows exactly what he holds. It is a relic left by his father, Viscount Barrett, to boost magic. But he has absolutely no plans to wear it as an ornament. Instead, he shatters the jewel, knowing this is his only real shot. As a weak, fourth-class magic user, he desperately needs this vital edge. Suddenly, a blinding beam of raw light erupts from the broken fragments. With his pathetic mana pool, this is his sole chance to summon her. No other tool would let his out-of-shape body survive this heavy ritual. Wait, what is he even trying to pull off here? Jard silently apologizes to his father, but this is his path to power. As he stands there waiting, a thick, dark cloud of smoke pours out. The black mist swirls violently, slowly taking a strange, menacing shape. It almost looks like a spooky sock puppet, but it keeps shifting. The shadow contorts further until a chilling voice asks who dared summon her. Jard is completely speechless, staring at the entity in absolute awe. He recognizes her instantly, a legendary summon you only get once. The ominous creature glares down, asking him directly if he did this. Jard knows her name. It is Isabella, a terrifyingly evil spirit. She looms closer, demanding to know once more what he wants from her. But he only sees her as the perfect foundation for his strength. Looking up, he remembers that Isabella has absolutely zero interest in cowards. He realizes he must stay completely relaxed. Fortunately, she actually prefers laid-back, lazy guys like him. This is his absolute only shot to win her over. Without wasting any time, he cuts straight to the main point. He asks her to grant him the incredible power of the mind's eye. The spirit cackles wildly, calling him an incredibly greedy brat. She asks if he really wants to peer into people's true identities. And that is exactly the legendary power he is chasing after. Only one person in the entire history of Paradiso ever held it. He knows the mind's eye allows him to see stats and personal dispositions. The raw details he gets will depend entirely on his level. The ultimate power he receives from it depends heavily on his magic tier. Jard plans to use this incredible ability to manage his domain. He will hunt down every single future star hidden in his lands. Surprisingly, the evil spirit agrees, but she has one condition first. Leaning close to his face, she asks what is most precious to him. He is not stupid, he knows every massive power-up has a price. Before he can even reply, she forces the contract upon him. She pulls his answer right out of him in the form of a physical scroll. Clutching his thoughts, she sighs, telling him that the mind's eye is officially his. But there is a catch, whatever he holds dear now belongs to her. She mocks him, warning that money, status, or even his family will be taken. She will strip it all away. Suddenly, he remembers Isabella can read minds. This has to be that infamous, wicked curse he once heard about. And yet, a strangely confident smirk starts to spread across his face. The wicked spirit blinks in confusion, wondering what he is smiling about. Weary of her threats, he smugly explains that he was just sorting his priorities. He was racking his brain to find his most valuable treasure, but now he knows. It is actually pretty simple. The real challenge was just organizing the thought. He just needed to lock it in. Finally, he announces his ultimate treasure. The first kiss from his previous life as an absolute loser named Shinta Pong. The grotesque spirit shrieks in denial, completely refusing to accept this as reality. What kind of absolute lunatic values a first kiss above all else? Honestly, it hurts his pride a bit to waste his first kiss on a monster. But hey, desperate times call for desperate measures, and he is absolutely ready for this. With his shirt billowing in the dramatic wind, he prepares to embrace his destiny. Just like that, the unbreakable contract with the wicked spirit Isabella is sealed. Back inside the grand mansion, a couple of maids are doing what they do best. They start whispering about Jard, gossiping about his sudden shift in behavior. The lazy guy suddenly transformed from a total couch potato to a man on fire. He literally bolted out of his room today for no apparent reason. Normally, the only thing that gets his blood pumping is a giant plate of food. But as they continue to gossip, another rush of footsteps echoes down the hallway. While they are whispering, another pair of heavy footsteps dashes past them. They even mention how he is suddenly visiting the creepy basement they all avoid. Just then, the maid Hayes dashes right past them with a mountain of documents. She is rushing to her master. The other maids ask if she needs help. But always eager to please, she happily tells them she has got it covered. With a quick smile, she leaves them behind to start whispering about her instead. They whisper about how hard she works, yet she never satisfies the master. He yelled at her once and she cried instantly. They actually feel pretty bad for her. Finally, she completes her task and presents the pile of documents to her lord. These are detailed reports on the neighboring territories and vassal states. But before she can place them on his desk, he tells her to freeze. Confused but obedient, she stands still while he uses his new ability on her. Looking at her status screen, he notices an incredibly high level of loyalty. She also has unique traits. Jard realizes keeping her as a maid is a waste. Keeping her cleaning floors would be foolish. She needs to become a healer. One of her specific traits stands out. It is called unrequited love. This rare condition requires someone to harbor a crush for 10 whole years. A decade of one-sided devotion, but honestly, his schedule is way too packed for romance. Shaking off the thought, he instructs her to hand over the research papers. He starts flipping through the pages, while Hayes watches him with nervous anticipation. She speaks up, apologizing to him, but Jard, knowing she did absolutely nothing wrong, wonders what the actual issue is. She apologizes again, telling him that she knows that whenever he asks her to do tasks, she typically never does it right the first time around. Bowing his head, he watches her hands. Closely, she is shivering as memories of past encounters play in his mind. Times when Jard interacted with her in a pretty violent manner. The young lord cannot help but feel angered by these memories, even going so far as calling his old self a fat bastard. He knows he just threw things at her and lashed out whenever anything annoyed him. Stepping closer, he calls her by name, even though he knows he was not the one responsible. He raises his hand, as she braces herself for the worst to her. Surprised, he gently hugs her and apologizes. He apologizes for every single thing done to her, recognizing that life here must have been incredibly exhausting. Yet she stayed, never complaining once about how badly she was treated. He promises her she will never see that pathetic side of him again. With that, he is determined to change for the better. After all, it was not actually him in the past, but this is a necessary step to take if he wants to become a truly good lord, asking her gently if she would grant him just one more chance. The pretty maid apologizes, crying into his chest because she got tears and snot on his shirt. Jard knows he carries the weight of whatever sins the past lord committed. They are his to bear now. Meanwhile, clattering plates echo through the dining hall. The sounds can be heard from a mile away as the fat lord eats. Hayes, the pretty maid, watches him with deep concern. She knows something is quite off with his strange choice of food today. She worries the lord will faint if he only eats vegetables and herbs. But Jard knows this extreme diet is the only way a heavy guy like him can successfully lose weight. These particular vegetables in the kingdom have a pretty strange effect on fullness, but the major downside is incredibly simple. They taste like absolute garbage. It is so bad that Jard cannot help but wonder if he is eating some horrible form of rotten cheese. Rubbed in someone's armpits and tossed on a plate, foul taste aside, the herbs seem to be working, boosting his lipolysis status and even restoring his metabolism back to normal. From that single meal alone, the young lord has managed to lose 450 grams of weight. Slowly but surely, the fat burns away almost miraculously. Although he is not skinny yet, he is definitely less round than before. But regardless of the benefits, Jard still cannot get over how absolutely disgusting these vegetables taste going down. He honestly feels like throwing everything back up. But just then, as everything seems completely lost, Hayes comes to his rescue once more, presenting him with a delicious steak she prepared just in case, explaining that she was worried about how big his back was getting, so she learned how to prepare a healthy dish from the chef a while back. She hopes the lord will give it a chance, even though he threw her food away before. And with that sweet statement acting basically as a declaration of love, our main guy he is practically moved to tears, wondering how on earth the original Jard could have ever mistreated an absolute angel like Hayes. Taking just one bite, it instantly feels to his food-loving soul like he is flying. But then again, that is expected from a rank chef. While enjoying his meal, he starts sorting through the details he gathered during his long study session today. From what he can gather, he discovered that a region known as the Caribbean territory is located in the northernmost reaches of the entire kingdom. He is pretty glad that he actually remembers that this northern territory is dirt poor, plagued constantly by an endless cycle of monsters, ruthless bandits, and a harsh environment that makes survival nearly impossible. This means they can't even grow normal crops. Shoveling more food down, he realizes there is actually a slight silver lining, at least for the locals, because in the middle of all that chaos, there is an abundance of easier quests and events they can cash in on. But as for him, he is still far too weak to even think about hunting down those lucrative opportunities just yet. And so as he swallows the very last bite, he decides to focus entirely on building up his strength. However, right at that moment, an uninvited guest crashes. The party, the vengeful spirit Isabella materializes, screaming to get her mind's eye back. Totally caught off guard, our main guy asks this ugly spirit what she is even doing lurking around his room, but she is absolutely furious about their past agreement. Screaming about how he dared to trick her, she makes it clear that until she gets that artifact back, she will keep haunting his chubby self until the day he dies. All our young lord can do is flash a strained, awkward smile, realizing that his quest isn't going to be as easy as he thought. But wait, what actually happened 10 years ago, before our main character ever took over the body of young Jard? We see someone pounding on his door, pleading with the boy to open up. A man stands outside, pounding hard, calling out to Jard that while they all know his father's passing was a terrible tragedy, it is time they start looking toward the future. The desperate knocking continues as he begs Jard to let them face these dark times together. On the other side, however, a surprisingly skinny Jard is curled up with his face buried in his knees, completely ignoring the voice outside, his mind completely consumed by grief for his late father. Back in the present, a voice in the mansion wonders why on earth the Lord summoned them so suddenly. Right away, a completely wasted, pathetic excuse of a soldier loudly assumes it is just some sort of 10-year anniversary party he shamelessly keeps. Chugging his liquor, clutching his bottle, he suddenly catches something out of the corner of his eye. It is two of the Lord's maids just minding their own business. With his foul, alcohol-soaked breath, he stumbles right up to them, hiccuping as he greets Hayes, who looks incredibly uncomfortable, but ever the polite girl. She greets Sir Glogus in return. The shameless drunkard simply calls her courteous, basically just a fancy word for polite. Inside his mind, Glogus is actually fuming. He has absolutely no clue why a sweet, wonderful angel like Hayes would waste her time serving a fat, disgusting pig like their lord, totally oblivious to Jard's dramatic change. He vows to make this beautiful maid his own someday. Just then, a much more respectable-looking gentleman steps in, commanding that Glogus stop his obnoxious behavior this instant, going so far as to call it childish. Hayes is glad to escape that pretty awkward exchange. He calls out to Sir Rakus, who is busy lecturing Galgus on how a loyal vassal is actually supposed to behave. Galgus freezes in shock when he sees Sir Rakus, but that surprise quickly morphs into pure anger. He stands frozen in shock at first, before his expression twists into pure anger. He asks if he is actually trying to teach a chief city guard how to conduct himself. But Rakus is not backed down by these pathetic drunken antics. Galgus just gets even angrier, calling him a whipped mutt who still hasn't learned his lesson. This pushes Sir Rakus to close the distance, demanding that he repeat those words one more time. But the drunkard just uses this chance to mock him, calling him an old man who has gone completely deaf. Before things can escalate any further, though, an older man with pretty wild eyebrows steps in to stop the brewing fight, reminding them both that their lord will be joining them very shortly. Sir Rakus turns to the strange-browed man, Sir Oberyn, while Galgus scoffs and walks away. He mutters in pure disgust as he retreats, loudly calling out both of the men, and spitting that it is sickening to see them still walking these halls. Rakus is furious at the insult, but somehow manages to hold himself back. He honestly cannot comprehend why a trash character like this was ever made chief guard. Sir Oberyn completely gets the frustration, but he also knows how incredibly difficult it is to find anyone suitable to assign to this position. With that settled, they decide to head over to the boardroom. Once inside, tense whispers and rumors quickly begin to spread among the gathered nobles. Everyone is wondering what on earth happened to make the Lord call this meeting. But even more surprising is the fact that he called it at all. And get this, he is actually reading documents, and even his double chin is gone. But Galgus, being the disrespectful drunk he is, just chugs down a bottle. The rest of them can only wonder if their lord has truly changed. Suddenly, Galgus slams his bottle onto the table, loudly calling out the lord. Reading boring documents is seriously not like him at all, he claims. Galgus suggests they just skip this meeting entirely and get absolutely wasted. He is totally confident the lord will love the fine booze he brought today. The lord silently processes what the trash chief guard just said to him. All that talk about drinks and alcohol, the chief guard even goes on to offer the lord some pretty girls to go with the liquor. This shameless display infuriates Rakus, who sees right through the drunk guard's scheme. He is trying to distract the lord, so he keeps ignoring his illegal deeds. Rakus decides to end this nonsense right now for the sake of Carib. But watch this, before anyone can move, the lord's icy voice cuts through the room. Sounding pretty annoyed with the situation, the lord asks how he dares to show up to this meeting drunk, demanding if he has lost his mind. This sudden shift shocks the entire room, leaving both Rakus and Galgus completely stunned. After a heavy, tense silence, the chief guard just lets out a nervous laugh. He tells the lord not to be so cold, reminding him of their shared drinks. But before he can even finish his sentence, a spell is suddenly cast. A magic missile fires, instantly shattering the bottle in his hand. The lord coldly tells him he will not overlook this disrespect. Such disgusting behavior, this completely enrages the chief guard, who is absolutely furious that he would dare use magic against him. He does not care even if he is the king, but before he can even finish speaking, the lord slams his documents right onto the table, declaring that it is time to drop the subject entirely, and immediately he calls out another major offense committed by the chief guard. He begins by asking if he is satisfied with the fortune he built by abusing his authority and ruthlessly extorting the very people he should protect. He stripped them of everything. Glagus is absolutely shocked that they finally exposed him. But before he can even speak, the lord details how deeply the local citizens have suffered terribly under the sheer weight of his endless, insatiable greed. He exposes every single one of the corrupt chief guard's dirty crimes, including stolen property, illegal tax collections, and even human trafficking. The chief guard has also gone as far as abducting subjects from the kingdom to train them for himself. Furious, the lord channels his magic, summoning a massive fireball to cut this traitor down, while he only shattered his alcohol bottle earlier as payback for being incredibly rude. He must now pay for all his major crimes. Jard is so angry that he refuses to wait. He fully intends to burn him to ashes. Without hesitation, he hurls the fireball straight at him. The massive blast connects, sending the corrupt guard crashing down with a severe burn across his entire back, although every single bone in Jard's body screams to kill him. He knows the law must still be upheld. Right then, he declares that Glagus is stripped of his rank, terrifying everyone in the room. He then vows to completely root out every single shred of corruption in his territory. Without a moment of hesitation, the rest of the guards all drop to their knees, pleading and begging for their lives. They confess to committing grave sins against the kingdom. Rakus watches everything from the sidelines, utterly astonished that someone as powerful as Glagus could be so easily taken down with nothing more than a single hit. This is the incredible power of the Ukulate's bloodline. This terrifying show reminds him of the legendary Viscount Barrett. Now, the lord turns his gaze to Rakus, declaring him the brand new chief guard of Caribbean territory. Rakus initially wants to decline, but Jard refuses to let him, asking if he dares to question his command. Immediately, Rakus falls right into line, promising to obey his every order. Finally, the lord asks the room if anyone else objects, but absolutely nobody dares to speak. And honestly, you have to love how he managed to claw back some of his family's lost dignity, which had previously hit absolute rock bottom. But looking at the untrustworthy men before him, he knows there is no one he can truly trust yet. Just then, he spots the old man with funky eyebrows. No words pass between them, but they share a knowing smile. Now, feeling a bit awkward, he decides to take things one step at a time. Luckily, he still has his mind's eye to guide him. 1 month after the meeting, a merchant is seen begging a group of thugs to spare his money. After all, how is he supposed to run a business with absolutely nothing left? The thugs are not hearing any of it. They simply say this mess is his own fault. If he had paid his taxes on time, he would not be in this tight spot. To them, he is making a fuss over nothing, even with a blade held to his throat. Meanwhile, the bandits realize their boss Glagas has not been around lately to collect the cut. They even wonder if he slipped away to enjoy some warm, sunny resort. But the others warn him, even if the boss is gone, do not touch that gold. Do not even dream of spending a single coin. With a greedy grin, he agrees. Suddenly, a weird sound echoes through the place, a light ding-dong chime. Completely caught off guard, they order one of the guys to go check the door. He cracks the door open, only to find a very unexpected visitor standing there. It is Lord Jard himself, waving with a cheerful smile that leaves the thug completely blank. He has no idea who this kid is, but before he can even blink, a heavy bone-crushing fist flies straight into his jaw, completely throwing him off balance. That single blow packs so much power, it literally lifts him off his feet. He crashes backward across the room, spitting out a few teeth along the way. The monstrous punch came from Reiki's, who is totally fuming at their absolute disrespect. He roars, "How dare these lowlifes speak to the Lord with such insolence?" Honestly, Lord Jard does not really care about their loud and foul mouths. What he absolutely will not tolerate is them extorting innocent citizens and merchants. He commands his chief guard to ensure not a single one of them gets away. Reiki's is absolutely thrilled to hear this order, cracking a terrifying grin. He is more than ready to unleash some serious pain on these thugs. Reiki's loudly declares that every single bandit is now under arrest and faces immediate judgment. The thugs stare in absolute shock, unable to believe their operations are over. But as the chaos unfolds, one sneaky bandit decides to make a move. He slips toward the back door, grabs the stolen loot, and tries to make a run for it. He sneaks outside and shuts the door, but he does not get very far. Lord Jard is already waiting outside, casually asking where he thinks he is going. Panicking, the thief drops the heavy sack of gold and tries to bolt. But our main character is already one step ahead, preparing a handy little spell. A quick magic missile to the back ensures the thief goes down hard. With the entire gang rounded up, the local citizens erupt in pure joy. They cheer for their lord and praise their heroic new chief guard, Reiki's. It is an incredible relief to finally be free from these ruthless extortionists. Jard addresses the crowd, admitting his past failures and making a solemn promise. From now on, he will always put the safety of his people first. Meanwhile, one of the captured bandits still cannot believe their boss Glagas got caught. Reiki's commands the citizens to always remember their lord's deep, protective love. They even distribute hot meals to the hungry and starving folks in town. He tells the crowd to carry gratitude for Lord Jard for the rest of their lives. Jard somehow manages to climb onto a horse and rides slowly through the streets. He waves warmly to his cheering people, who happily wave back at their savior. Back inside the mansion, Jard sits down with Reiki's, Oberyn, and his trusted advisors. They discuss how the common folk are finally starting to trust their ruler again. In fact, many of them are now outright fiercely loyal to the young lord. Lord Jard has done it. The public outreach was a massive, undeniable success. He checks in on his newly appointed chief guard to see if everything is going well. He asks if the men and the new role have been agreeable for him. The guard stands tall, replying to the young lord with an enthusiastic, resounding yes. He showers Jard with praise, thanking him every single day for this honorable role. All this heavy flattery actually triggers a pretty nice boost to Jard's charm skill. Jard simply tells his guard that as long as he is content, then all is well. He trusts him completely to protect the local people and oversee their general well-being. Plenty of things happened during the time they spent hunting down the local criminals. Honestly, it is pretty wild how fast he turned his reputation around. Public sentiment is up, but he secured an even bigger advantage. He made sure to assign only highly competent soldiers to the chief guard. Each elite fighter was hand-picked, using his mind's eye to serve under him. He owes a lot to that mind's eye ability, but the annoying ghost won't stop complaining. She constantly nags him about it, demanding that he return her eye right this second. At this point, he simply ignores her, wondering if she will ever shut up. Turning to an old advisor with pretty thick eyebrows, the man presents his report. He reports that the crops are growing well, thanks to their new farming methods. Yet the old man is still deeply concerned about the harsh, 6-month winters. And of course, there is the ever-present threat of destructive vermin ruining everything. Jard shifts his attention to another official named Villa, who presents their economic plan. Villa explains their campaign, urging citizens to prioritize buying locally made products. But they still need more time to reach those target figures. Knowing the mind's eye cannot solve this, Jard realizes he must work harder. He needs to step up and start picking up the slack himself. Leaning back, he starts firmly pressing his stomach. The chief guard immediately notices this odd, repetitive gesture and speaks up. He mentions seeing the Lord do it often, calling it quite a friendly posture. The young lord quickly lies, claiming it is a unique foreign technique. He explains that it is a special exercise used to shed some extra weight. The chief guard smiles, saying he looks more kingly as he loses weight. This flattery amuses the lord, prompting him to let out a quiet chuckle. But the heavy lord was absolutely lying. This has nothing to do with weight loss. He actually does this specific stomach massage to rapidly expand his mana reserves. The trick works by releasing mana from his hands and forcing it back inside. Once reabsorbed, his mana levels surge. Back in his past life, players knew this bug. Doing this routine daily for a month raises his mana levels by 12. However, as a 4th-class mage, he can only use this exploit twice more. But just as Jard is distracted by his mana calculations, a guard suddenly charges in. He frantically yells that he is carrying an urgent, high-priority report. The search party the Lord sent out has finally located a hidden bandit camp. They found it deep within the coal mines, and they located the slaves. Flashback to a year ago, 2 heavy iron swords clash violently during intense training. A young girl stands in the distance, silently watching the fierce match unfold. As she closely observes their movements, she marvels at how incredibly skilled they are. She grips her sword. Suddenly, 2 dark, looming figures approach her from behind. One of them demands to know why she is always snooping around here. The other wonders if she is asking for trouble, but Lena is not. Terrified at all, only startled, recognizing the pair, she eagerly cries. Out welcoming her older brother and sister, they warn her that if she keeps slacking off, she is going to face some pretty serious consequences. Honestly, she is not worried. She is already far quicker than other kids. They know this little Spitfire is remarkably strong. Her name is Lena. Wait, a maid? No way. It turns out this energetic little girl is actually a 14-year-old. She is supposed to start working at the Lord's mansion as a humble maid, yet she happily explains that since the director always looks out for them, her new job will surely be incredibly fun. But her sister sighs, thinking it is a massive waste of her potential. After all, she secretly wished the little girl would enlist in their elite mercenary group instead. Hearing this, the quiet girl hesitates, looking down in silence. She stays quiet for a moment, then calls out to quickly stop them. She looks up and asks them if she could ever become a truly great swordsman. Even if it takes some time, her brother just laughs, asking her a very blunt question: does she know why mercenary bands barely have any women? Drawing his blade, he unleashes a massive shockwave that tears up the ground. He warns her that surviving out here with such a naive mindset is completely impossible. He continues, out in the real world, you adapt or you die. Lost to death while others simply quit, but he keeps going, explaining that men face the exact same hardships, meaning your gender actually changes absolutely nothing. Instead, it is all about your spirit, your talent, and your willpower. They see Lena as the most talented, fully knowing she will succeed. Even if it fails, they will easily use their immense power to hire her instantly. Hearing this gives her the ultimate resolve to push forward, but get this, nothing ever goes to plan. Her dreams quickly shatter. Fast forward to the harsh reality of today. Lena sits chained inside a cold, dark room, thinking desperately of her beloved family. Memories of her life before her tragic capture play continuously. She remembers a kind man calling her name while holding two small children. That man, the director of her old orphanage, has something crucial to tell her. He calls her a God-given angel to the orphanage, begging her to always give her all. She happily agrees, wanting to help, but every word was a flat-out lie. Without a shred of hesitation, the director sells her off to a group of bandits. Immediately, one of the bandits actually tells her the truth about the deal. She was sold directly by the director, poor Lena, a sweet, naive little girl. The 14-year-old girl refuses to believe it, yelling that this is completely impossible. She was promised a job as a noble maid, but the bandits just laugh at her. They mock her, call her an absolute fool for actually believing that lie. In reality, she is no maid, she is nothing but a slave. But she is not giving up, telling the bandit to shut his mouth. Obviously, these cowardly scumbags are not going to stick around for a beating. They pull out a whip without a second thought. Orphan, slave, there is a massive difference. Now she is a bought slave, and she needs to learn to speak to them with respect. She has to respect them, after all, they own her. Lena collapses. She desperately shields her head from the incoming blows. The whip lashes down repeatedly, yet even through the pain, she refuses to believe it. She cannot believe the orphanage director would actually betray her like this. Selling her into slavery is something she simply cannot believe that kind man would do. 1 month passes, one slow, painful month in this wretched cell. Aside from the brutal punishments, she spends all her time locked up. Behind those heavy, cold iron bars, she eventually meets a surprisingly cheerful and red-haired girl. The girl suddenly turns to her. Did you say you came from Mayor Rika? Once Lena confirms this, the girl shrugs and delivers a cold, harsh truth. She bluntly tells Lena that she was bound to be a slave from the very start. Completely confused, Lena listens as the girl explains how things really work. It turns out every single orphan from her town gets sold off directly as slaves. Apparently, that is exactly what the territory lord ordered. She is certain her orphanage director is working with the traffickers. He sold her out, so she might as well give up, but Lena is stubborn. She absolutely refuses to break. No matter what, she will escape this hell. Hearing this, the red-haired girl cannot take her seriously at all. She just stares blankly, telling her she is actually pretty funny for thinking that. Lena is astonished. How could anyone give up on freedom so easily? She asks her straight up, do you not even want to escape? The girl shrugs, saying she has honestly never given escaping even a single second thought. She introduces herself as Manny, stretching out a pretty dirty hand. She asks Lena to get along with her until they eventually die in this hell. Lena flatly refuses to shake it, though, after seeing what Manny was just doing. Manny was literally picking her nose just 2 seconds ago, and the booger remains. Plus, her hopeless way of thinking is just downright depressing. Manny calls it being realistic. Soon, another month flies by. Quite surprisingly, the two young girls actually start getting along with each other absolutely swimmingly. Finding other child slaves their age is actually pretty hard here. Most of the other captives are broken, acting like lifeless puppets. Yet those puppet-like children get sold off incredibly fast despite their terrible and weak condition. Lena has no idea if staying behind is a blessing or not. All she knows is that she will absolutely not give up, ever. She has until she reaches the age of 15, which is the absolute peak selling point. Half a year passes, she finally gets used to the harsh labor. Not exactly something you would want to get used to, is it? She quickly realizes that the cruel kingdom of Carib is way worse than Mayor Rika. During their grueling days, she actually learns a lot from her friend. Mostly just boring details about how the outside world actually functions in these dark times. Manny explains that the kingdom is struggling due to terrible weather. It does not help that their young and incompetent leader is making everything much worse. Whenever Lena asks how she knows so much, Manny just smiles. But Mia has incredibly sharp hearing and easily overhears what those thugs are plotting. As they work, Manny reminds her that this country is built for monster hunters, not mercenaries. This brutal country is built strictly for monster hunters, not simple mercenaries. So Lena should not expect her siblings to rescue her anytime soon. But even so, she refuses to give up. She will keep fighting, believing with all her heart they are coming. Manny shows her rebellious streak by spitting directly into the food she cooks. She stirs, calling Lena the most stubborn slave she has ever met. It is ridiculous, but she respects that iron will. She cannot help but admire her friend's refusal to break. Then, a year passes. During a howling storm, now 15 years old, her life takes a dark turn. Lena finds her only friend collapsed on the floor, burning up with sickness. She is terrified. Without immediate help, her friend will die down here. Desperate, she turns to a guard who is already in a foul mood. He is furious at Glogas, the idiot chief guard who promised them easy days. Instead, they got caught by the fat lord and thrown into this pit. Now he is stuck guarding miserable slaves in the dark, damp dungeon. Drinking heavily, his anger boils over as he stares at the prisoners. Stuck down here, trapped in this godforsaken hole with them. Through the bars, Lena begs him for just a simple bowl of hot soup to break the fever. She drops straight to her knees, weeping and promising to obey every single order. If he will just show a tiny bit of mercy, she will do anything. Even half a bowl would save her friend. That is how desperate she is right now. The guard actually brings the soup, and Lena wraps a blanket around her shivering friend. Eat up before it gets cold, she urges, trying to ignore her own terror. It is sickening to watch as the guard wraps his heavy arms around her. He grabs Lena, dragging her toward the dark corner of the cell. Your friend will be fine alone, he sneers. Now you and I have some business. Manny weakly tries to shout, but Lena looks back and softly whispers that she will be okay. The vile man grips her jaw tightly, turning his disgusting gaze toward Manny. He boasts about his cruel intentions, telling her to watch. But a swift movement to the side catches his eye, cutting him off. Before he can even react, a bowl of boiling hot soup flies straight at him. It hits him directly in the face, the scalding liquid burning his skin instantly. He screams in absolute agony, clutching his blistered face as he stumbles back. Lena freezes in horror, but Manny grabs her arm, pulling her back. We have to run, Manny gasps. We need to get out of this place right now. Hand in hand, the two girls sprint for their lives down the dark corridor. Manny scolds her as they run, asking how she could humiliate herself for a bowl of soup. Others might sell their dignity, but Lena is supposed to be different. She is no mindless slave, she is a warrior sister. They run for the exit, but they do not make it far. The recovering guard lunges from the shadows, grabbing Lena and violently pulling her back. Furious and scarred, he roars at Manny, demanding to know where she thinks she is going. In a blind, vicious rage, he draws his steel blade and slashes downward. Lena watches in sheer terror as fresh blood sprays across the cold stone floor. A brutal gash tears across her friend's body. Manny collapses, and Lena lets out a desperate scream. No, she screams. She punches the man right in the face to break free of his grip. She yells at him to let her go, rushing over to her fallen friend's side. Surrounded by a pool of blood, Manny lies still as Lena begins to weep. Why would you do that? Lena asks, calling her an idiot for taking the blade for her. She stares down at her bleeding friend. Manny softly explains her reasoning. Her own life has always been pretty miserable, surrounded by nothing but thieves and killers. Seeing people get robbed and murdered was normal to her. It was all she ever knew. But Lena is different. Even as an orphan, she actually had a dream. Honestly, Manny hated her at first because of that hope, but things changed. Now she admits she was just incredibly jealous. That is why she did it. That is why she had to protect her, why she wanted to save her life. As the light begins to fade from her dying eyes, Manny makes one final request. She begs Lena to never give up, and Lena tearfully makes that promise. No matter what it takes, she swears she will escape this awful place. Fueled by a sudden burning rage, Lena makes a quiet, terrifying vow. She's going to kill every last person in this room, starting with the man before her. Staring him down, she locks her cold gaze onto his single good eye. He would absolutely hate to admit it, but he is genuinely pretty creeped out. Angry, he tackles her to the floor, demanding to know who she thinks she is. He screams at her to look at his scarred face and see what her friend did. To him, this is the perfect excuse to end her life right here. But right then, a cold new voice interrupts, asking if he calls that minor injury a burn. Before the confused bandit can even react, a blinding light flashes. A massive beam of magic hits him, roasting him worse than a rotisserie chicken. And the man behind this incredible magic is none other than the Lord himself. Lord Jard has arrived, right at the entrance of the bandits' hideout. He and his chief guard are fully prepared to launch their raid. But before moving in, the chief guard wonders how the Lord found this location. Jard explains that since their old, failed guard captain, Glagas, was gone, he knew the bandits would need a safe spot to hide out for a few weeks. And honestly, what better hiding place is there than an abandoned mine? It was the most obvious choice for a group on the run. Hearing this, Raucus cannot help but praise his lord's incredible intellect. Clearly flattered, the heavy lord turns to address his waiting troops. He reminds them that their primary mission is to wipe out the slave masters. Those criminals have nested deep inside this old mine for too long. They are here to rescue every single captive and deliver true justice. With his speech finished, he orders his men to show no mercy today. Every last slaver needs to be wiped off the map. The clash begins, and panic quickly spreads among the local thugs. They scramble to alert everyone that they are under heavy attack. They have absolutely no plan and desperately try to call a guy named Ched. But before he can even make the call, a guard strikes him down. The guard coldly promises that not a single one of them escapes alive today. The clash goes on as more of those weak small fry get sliced to pieces with absolute effortlessness. Victory secured, Jard and his squad venture deep down into the mine shafts. Once inside, they realize they're facing a massive maze of split pathways. Still, the Lord is. He is pleased with how effortlessly those guards fell. He instantly orders his men to begin a full sweep of the entire area. Meanwhile, let us check back in on poor little Lena. Since burning that awful guard alive, Jard has felt nothing but pure disgust for this place. Sure, he played this game for years and knew about the virtual slave camps, but witnessing it up close and personal in real life makes his stomach turn with rage. Trying to keep his composure, he slowly walks over to Lena and softly takes her hand, asking if she is all right. She nods, claiming she is fine. Though she cannot stop crying over her friend, the brave little red-headed girl who gave her life. She says her friend died trying to protect her from that terrible guard, seeing the dead girl nearby. Jard activates his mind's eye skill, instant dread. There is nothing he can do to help, she is far beyond the reach of healing magic. He pulls the sobbing girl into a gentle embrace and softly whispers an apology, wishing with all his heart that he had arrived just a few minutes sooner. Looking at her, he spots her broken state, her dangerously thin frame. It is brutally clear she has already survived a living hell. Suddenly, a drunk thug named Ched stumbles into the room, screaming at the top of his lungs. He demands to know what is going on, which, honestly, is pretty funny coming from him. The drunk fool squint eyes at Jard, slowly realizing exactly who has crashed his party. Immediately mocking the Lord's size, he calls him a useless fat pig. Shaking with liquid courage, the angry thug yells that Jard should have stayed completely out of what he calls their private business. But now Jard is thoroughly annoyed. He absolutely hates being insulted like that. Because of this disrespect, he decides that Ched must be eliminated immediately. However, the arrogant thug is not worried at all. He does not believe that a heavy pig like Jard could ever hope to defeat him in a magic duel. After all, Ched thinks he is the superior mage. The two face off in tense silence for a brief moment before Ched suddenly casts a swift lightning spell. The spark flies straight at Jard, who easily dodges it, to the thug's absolute surprise. Jard is already casting a speed enhancement spell he never anticipated. It is the haste spell. Activating this power, our hero begins running incredibly fast circles around Ched, leaving him completely disoriented. The drunk wizard scrambles, trying to recognize the spell that is blinding him. It is just basic magic, really. It simply boosts physical movement speed. Still, Ched knows that such sudden acceleration makes it incredibly tough to control your steering. He hopes to exploit that weakness right now. Since he cannot hit his moving target, Ched decides to blast the entire surrounding area. If he destroys the room, Jard will have nowhere to run, but of course, before the drunk can act, Jard strikes first with a familiar attack, firing off a perfectly aimed magic missile that sends Ched crashing down. Standing over him, Jard mocks the idiot for attempting complex spells while heavily intoxicated. That stupid move left him wide open, sealing his pathetic fate. Just like that, Jard took him down. The guy did not even have time to get angry. It was almost laughable how easily this high and mighty leader crumbled. Best of all, wiping out these goons completed two separate side quests for Jard. First was his ongoing war on crime, a massive boost to his reputation. This single move pushed public loyalty up by 23 points. Plus, crushing the syndicate added another 34 points to the board. Step by step, his small territory of Carib is heading toward a golden age. Once that bird-brained leader fell, handling the remaining rabble was a total breeze. Every single kidnapper, murderer, and thug caught in the dragnet faced immediate justice. Jard ordered swift executions, absolutely no mercy. Under his direct orders and tight guard, the captured slaves were freed. They reunited with their families, except for one little girl named Lena. For some reason, Jard decides she is allowed to stay in his domain. Shocked, she asks if he is actually sure about keeping her around. But he is dead serious, knowing her hometown of Morocco offers nothing but pain. Sending her back means another corrupt orphanage and getting sold all over again. Besides, he needs talented young prospects to help build his future forces. He is on the lookout for raw talent, and he sees something special in her. Not only does he want her around, but he is offering something even better. Jard is fully prepared to personally train her to become a powerful swordsman. Hearing this makes Lena ecstatic. She enthusiastically thanks her new lord. She vows to become a blade that will meet his every single expectation. But wait, this is not just simple charity. He remembers her clearly from his past life as an obsessed gamer. In 10 years, this sweet girl is destined to become a legendary vanguard. She was destined to lead the front lines for the Demon King himself. Her character was completely broken. Even hundreds of players could not take her down. She would just stand her ground, smiling as she blocked every single assault. Players called her the ultimate tank. Her legendary nickname was the Wailing Wall Lena. Her defensive line was a literal fortress that absolutely nobody could breach. But since Jard found her first, the entire future is about to change. He refuses to let the Demon King lay a single finger on her this time. As he heals her wounds, he swears to make her a rising star instead. Little Lena remains totally clueless, simply happy that her scratches are fading away. With that issue sorted out, Jard realizes he still has a massive problem to solve. Specifically, the neighboring territory of Mayara, where the current chief is a complete corrupt fool. If that chief turns a blind eye to slavery, who knows what other evil things he permits? Jard knows this rot will spread. It is a ticking time bomb. Let's check in on Mayura right now to see the mess firsthand. A shadowy figure named Horos is confronted about where the kingdom's gold is going. Meanwhile, a bald-headed man who must have lungs of steel is chain-smoking nearby. He grumbles about Jard's growing influence, calling his territory a minor nuisance. To him, Jard's territory is nothing more than an annoying little mosquito. The smoker glances over at a gothic-looking ally who shares his bad habit. He asks his fellow smoker what they should do about their failed ally's downfall. Then this guy named Fua calmly reassures the bald leader that he will handle it. After all, his edgy ego demands personal payback for the defeat of his clothes. Ally that total loser Glagus. Meanwhile, night settles quietly over the kingdom, leaving everyone fast asleep, while oblivious guards slowly walk their usual routes. But lurking in the dark, a mysterious shadowy figure is plotting something entirely different. He leaps across rooftops like a total ninja, easily bypassing the clueless guards patrolling below. Soon enough, he reaches his final destination, well hidden from sight, and casually drops a heavy bag onto the floor. He looks down at it coldly. Cut to the next morning, where our Lord is struggling hard, desperate to burn off some of those extra pounds. He drags his heavy frame around the yard, completely out of breath and drenched in sweat. Not exactly a majestic sight. Meanwhile, Lena is totally in her element, setting a steady pace without even breaking a sweat. Honestly, compared to 1 year of brutal slave labor, this is just a walk in the park. Their trainer shouts encouragement from the sidelines, letting them know they are finally on the very last lap of the run. But it is pretty obvious our out-of-shape lord cannot keep up at all. He gasps and asks an energetic Lena if these brutal morning runs actually make her happy. She cheerfully answers that she loves them, especially since those cramped minds were too smelly. For any real exercise, the Lord tries his best to sound encouraging, promising to keep up this routine. He even mentions hiring a professional fitness instructor soon, and Lena is absolutely thrilled about it, but right now, he realizes they might have pushed things a bit too far today. Before he can finish that thought, he violently throws up everywhere, leaving Lena completely disgusted. Honestly, the nearby guard feels the exact same. While eating his morning meal back home, the Lord gets letters from both Sir Oberyn and Avila. Hayes, the sweet and beautiful young maid, carefully hands him the letters, explaining that the messages arrived at the estate earlier this morning. As he opens them, our incredibly curious little girl stands right by his side, eagerly asking what exciting news the messages hold, and weirdly enough, he is actually willing to discuss complex political matters with a child. I mean, what does a kid know about managing an entire territory anyway? Still, he happily explains the letters, giving her updates on their kingdom's current progress. Sir Oberyn, the man with the very unique eyebrows, reports some amazing news. He has successfully cultivated a special local crop called El Ryala, and since they heavily rely on expensive food imports from other lands, growing this resource will definitely help reduce their heavy food import costs. Meanwhile, Avila has also done great work by attracting a lot more monster hunters into their territory. This means they can finally start trading the valuable magic crystals collected. Compared to their terrible financial state last month, they are turning a decent Prophet, hearing this, Lena recalls her grim days trapped in the dungeon. Hearing rumors that their struggling homeland, Carabea, was doomed to fall. Yet looking around right now, things seem much brighter and more hopeful than she expected. The Lord gently explains that this is only the beginning of their glorious rise. Soon the entire continent will recognize the name of their small fiefdom. Unfortunately, their quiet breakfast is suddenly interrupted, which surely ruins his appetite. This time it is Sir Raucus, the truly dependable knight of the kingdom. The chief guard, Jard, is pretty confused to see him here, but his guard simply tells him there is an urgent matter he needs to address immediately. As they walk way to the scene of the emergency, it turns out that something was uncovered, and not just here, but in multiple other locations as well. The Lord is absolutely furious, unable to even comprehend who on earth would dare dump things inside his kingdom walls. It turns out that what they were throwing around were cold, dead bodies, monster corpses to be exact. The chief guard is deeply embarrassed. He honestly feels this is a massive stain on his guard duties, and it only happened because he fell short on his watch, checking the corpse. The chubby lord tells him to take it easy on himself because, after all, not a single person died during this incident, and their territory has no real walls, so things like this are bound to happen. Fortunately, the clever lord deduces that since he has managed to boost his people's loyalty, the person behind this must be a foreigner. But he simply cannot grasp what they could possibly hope to gain from doing this. Suddenly, they notice a loud and chaotic commotion in the distance, as a frantic voice cries out, begging someone to save her sick mother. The two men immediately turn their heads toward the noise. The girl even tries to convince them to save her sick mother by offering to sell herself. That is just how incredibly desperate she is, but the poor merchant she is pleading with has no way to help because he doesn't even stock the cure her mother needs. He screams at her, telling her to just give up, but she flatly refuses. As they continue their dramatic scene, the Lord steps in and asks the little girl who she is. To the surprise of everyone around them, Jard continues. As everyone stares in sheer awe because seeing the Lord in person is a huge deal, he asks the weeping girl what kind of medicine she is searching for. Sobbing, the young child introduces herself as Mia, crying as she explains that her poor mother has fallen terribly ill with the Ronella disease. Hearing this name instantly startles the chubby lord, who actually remembers it from his past life as a lazy shut-in. Mia blames the merchant, claiming he refuses to sell her the cure her mother desperately needs, and the panicked pharmacist quickly begins begging them, insisting he is innocent and that curing this illness is practically impossible. The Lord cuts him off, flatly stating that he already knows finding a cure is extremely difficult. He knows the only way to cure this disease is through blessing from the pontiff or the legendary potion from the Ethema Empire. He remembers the Ronella disease is very similar to tuberculosis. Interestingly, its name actually originates from the very region where it was first discovered. The Ronella territory, an area packed with deadly dungeons and fierce monsters. The Lord gently kneels down, asking the young girl to guide him straight to her mother, shocking little Mia. He reassures her that he knows how to cure the sickness, so she leads him home. Once inside, she explains that her mother is resting up on the second floor, but the Lord is nervous. This old building is quite fragile, and he wonders if the wooden stairs can even support his heavy build, and let's face it, he's massive. Fortunately, he makes it safely, and Mia guides him into the small room, calling out to her sick mother. Mia runs to her bedside, excitedly shouting that she has found help. A stranger arrives offering to help, but the sick woman does not seem happy about it at all. Honestly, for someone who looks like she is about to draw her very last breath, she weakly speaks to the man she assumes is a doctor, telling him she has no money for treatment and he should just leave her to die. But as he steps closer, The young lord uses his system to see she literally only has 7 days left, a total death sentence. He has to act, so he tells her that he does not want a single coin and begs her to just rest, but Mia quickly corrects her mother, explaining that he is actually the lord of this land, and he personally came here to cure her. Looking closer, the mother suddenly recognizes his face, gasping that they have not seen each other in a very long time. This completely confuses our reincarnated protagonist, making him wonder if they have actually met before. She confirms that they have indeed met. In fact, she worked directly for him 8 years ago as his personal chef. Hearing this, he cannot help but face palm hard, remembering that those were the exact years he was acting like a total brat. Naturally, he immediately apologizes. Bad habits die hard. He kneels right next to her bed to examine her closely, but she is quite worried, telling him that he must keep his distance from her contagious illness, though he refuses to listen. He gently asks Mia to fetch a damp towel so he can properly care for her mother, and the little girl eagerly runs out to help. Once she is gone, the young lord walks over to the window to inspect the backyard, and just as he suspected, he spots the carcass of a dead monster rotting right outside. Turning back, he asks if she has been handling monsters for a long time. She nods, explaining that she has indeed worked around dangerous beasts for years. Specifically, she served as the chef for an elite hunting squad that traded in monster parts. He knows this illness does not spread between humans, but comes from prolonged exposure to dead monster carcasses. It is a silent, symptomless killer that is almost impossible to diagnose early on. He realizes she has been quietly battling this infection for years, but her recent exposure to the fresh monster corpse outside has pushed her over the edge. Mary is devastated, weeping as she wonders who would do this and if this is truly her end. But right on cue, the reliable Hayes arrives with Lena, proudly announcing that they have gathered every single herb. Now it is time to cure her. The Lord tells Mary to trust him completely, rolling up his sleeves to get to work, and promising that he will not leave her bedside until she is fully recovered. Mary is utterly lost for words as overwhelming relief fills her heart. She asks how on earth she can ever repay such incredible kindness, but the Lord simply smiles and tells her not to worry, saying they can discuss payment after she is back on her feet. But wait, there is a spectator. Up on the rooftop, the culprit behind this plot secretly watches, listening to the Lord, wondering how he could possibly cure an incurable plague. Plans to cure this incurable plague, but he is not alone up there. It is Esrachus staring at him with absolute fury. It turns out the Lord predicted the criminal would sneak back, so he stationed the chief guard on high alert right near the crime scene, and the chief guard is absolutely furious. He knows this is the monster who has been spreading deadly plagues across the kingdom, using monster corpses, but the killer does not seem bothered at all. He taunts him, asking if he is really curious. Model Asher, Rolana, and Nickel, easy enough herbs to gather. Still, they had no idea these plants had the power to cure such a deadly disease. As they prepare the recipe, Jard recalls exactly where he found it, back in his days as a worthless loser who did nothing but spend all his time playing this game. He remembers finding this formula from a herbalist, while many others demanded the rights to the cure. Thanks to all of their hard work, he successfully crafts the medicine, even though it was meant to be found 10 years later. The dying woman turns her weak head to face the Lord while he sits preparing her remedy. She speaks, and he grants her permission to address him. She asks the noble lord why such a high figure works so hard for poor commoners and peasants like her. Jard does not turn back to face her. Instead, he simply answers, saying that one has to experience pain of their own to understand the pain of others. Total anime quote there. She asks if he had caught the virus himself at some point, because she has no clue what he means. He brushes it off, saying he has spent his Entire life perfectly healthy, growing up with all the love in the world. But his mother, a woman he deeply cherished and who shared nothing. But pure love did not get that chance. Mind you, this is not even the same Jard, who grew up here, so it is a bit confusing, but as it turns out, the story is entirely true. Back when he was a loser on Earth, his family was so poor that his sick mother could not even afford a proper checkup at the hospital. By the time they scraped the cash together, it was already far too late for his mother, who could not even use her hands anymore. The disease had reached the final stages of terminal cancer. He was not sad, just pure rage. He blamed himself for having the inability to fix things, and even now, 15 years later, long dead and reborn in a different world, he somehow still carries that heavy guilt. That is exactly why he is standing here, because he knows exactly what little Mia is going through right now. He refuses her to suffer the exact same loss he did, a truly heartbreaking story. While the Lord deals with these painful feelings outside, his chief guard goes head-to-head with the villain behind this mess, leaping from rooftop to rooftop in a fierce duel. Blades clash while the assassin continues to parry every single blow, trying to guide his weapon for a lethal strike. But the chief guard is way too fast, smoothly avoiding the incoming danger. This reckless assassin cannot keep up this high pace forever, though. As he forces a dagger up to block, he realizes Suros is pressing down on his steel with massive, crushing power. Still, the criminal slips away before the heavy sword can connect. Desperate to end this fight now, he prepares to strike at the chief guard. Moving like a shadow, he launches his strike. He lands a solid hit right on the guard's face, sending him into a brief daze from the sudden impact, much to the killer's shock. Though the criminal actually accomplished nothing with that, as the chief guard does not even flinch, turning his deadly focus right back to him. Reikis mocks him, asking if that is really all he has got. Talk about a disappointment. Disgusted by how weak this assassin actually is, Reikis just cannot help but ask, how does a guy with such low skills even dare to raise a hand against this kingdom? As he strikes, the assassin desperately attempts to block the incoming heavy blow. Too slow, he gets easily blown away, soaring straight up into the open sky. Staring down, the assassin finally realizes the chief guard is way stronger than he ever expected. Completely stunned, the assassin wonders where on earth this crazy power came from. As it turns out, his immense strength actually stems from a Luckily, Reikis gets a huge power boost from his hidden traits when fighting evil. His natural sense of order and justice pushes his strength past all limits. Landing back on the roof, the masked assassin quickly realizes a grim reality. Because he has been officially marked as a villain, he cannot possibly win. Against the powerful chief guard, the assassin feels a heavy, suffocating pressure. The chief guard warns him that fighting is useless, telling him to surrender quietly. Surprisingly, the killer accepts his defeat, knowing he is totally outmatched. He honestly believed he could easily assassinate the chief guard upon arrival. Forced to face this brutal reality, he decides to throw in the towel. Shrugging off his failure, the assassin casually prepares to head home for the night. Reikis immediately stops him, coldly asking who gave him permission to leave. Still incredibly smug, the killer looks back and tells the guard not to worry. He promises that their paths will cross again, and that day is coming very soon. With a sly grin, he drops a smoke bomb, blinding the entire rooftop. He bids the guard farewell, promising they will settle their score next time. Blinded by the sudden haze, Reikis immediately assumes a defensive, guarded stance. Squinting through the fog, he tries to figure out where the killer fled. As the smoke finally clears, the assassin is already long gone. 2 weeks have passed since that chaotic night, and Mia sits quietly, watching the horizon. Pure mana explodes right before her eyes, and a mysterious voice commands her to watch. Mia watches closely as the merging method is explained. Basically, mana can be clumped together, but there is another option, the condensing method. This completely confuses the little girl. She asks the man before her why they do not just focus on studying one method instead of both of them. The mysterious voice actually agrees with her at first, but then it explains what happens if she ever faces a magician who can destroy all the surrounding mana, a mage who only relies on merging wood. Be left completely useless. This thought horrifies the little girl, who wonders how terrible it must feel to be a magician unable to cast spells. The odd mage agrees, telling her that is exactly why she needs to learn both methods, even if it seems difficult. Mia agrees with his advice. But she still has another question. She wants to know what exactly is going on with the weird costume Jard decided to put on in front of her. Honestly, who is he trying to fool with that massive frame? He finally decides to take it off. He asks if it really looks that weird since he wanted to look like a proper magic teacher. Mia, however, completely disagrees, telling him the costume actually looks pretty silly. Meanwhile, he takes that as her just being honest, but mid-discussion, a sudden knock rattles the door. The handle jiggles, and in walks a servant to deliver a quick message. Dinner is ready. Hearing the word food, little Mia immediately bolts for the exit. Jard calls out to her, yelling that their lesson is not over yet. She does not care, she is already gone, chasing her stomach. The servant instantly worries she disturbed the Lord and starts apologizing for her timing. But he tells her it is fine. Honestly, he is curious to see what she cooked. This is Chef Mary, who finally got better and returned to work here. She recovered and started working in the Lord's estate again, happy to be back. Her only hope right now is that her dishes suit the Lord's tastes. On the way, Jard gently tells Mary to rest more instead of overworking. She reassures him that she feels amazing, all thanks to his incredible care. Since he keeps a pretty weird diet, tonight's main course is bean steak. A bean steak, but as he leaves, Isabella continues to watch from a distance. And honestly, who can blame her? Jard is nothing like his old self. A soft, swirling blue light starts to fill the entire chamber. Right in the center sits Jard, looking a bit smaller than his usual self. He knows that in this world, everyone is constantly looking for easy shortcuts. Sitting there, he exploits his little cheat code to rapidly boost his mana. He justifies the cheat by calling it just another smart shortcut in life. Sure, relying on cheap tricks makes you inferior, but hey, it works. Suddenly, the system pings. He has just unlocked an entirely new training method. The system asks him to name it, representing a brand new path for himself. He is paving a completely new road. This custom method involves a mix of his bugged exploit and the standard training used by average mages. It immediately boosts his levels by 6 points. He sits there in silence, searching for the perfect name, knowing this is a footprint of his existence. He wants something deeply symbolic to mark his presence in this world. Now he realizes that he is the only player reaping the game's ultimate rewards. But he is not truly alone in this room, far from it. Isabella, who basically lives by his side now, speaks up from the corner. She says she has seen countless mages, but his style is bizarre. The rather handsome lord looks back at the evil spirit with a grin. He asks if she can actually see the glitch in his training method. She admits she can see it, but promises normal people never would. Even though he is cheating, he is absorbing mana at an insane speed. Because of this, she starts to suspect he is not from around here. That catches Jard completely off guard, and panic instantly flashes in his eyes. He turns to her, nervously demanding to know what she means by that. But she simply wonders if he originates from a completely different continent. After all, Eastern continent folks are famous for their incredible mana absorption. Jard lets out a massive sigh, instant relief. He immediately starts lying. He claims his ancestors passed down old family legends that match her theory. Privately, he recalls that in his past life, the East was massive. Back then, that whole Eastern continent was just a massive expansion project. Reminisces about the game Paradiso, which was developed for 5 long years. He is sad. At the fact that he died right before its release, the spirit wonders what exactly he is thinking about, noting that so many interesting things always seem to happen around him, making her incredibly curious about it. But he is not moved at all by her words, simply asking, "So what?" She warns him to watch his mouth. They really need to get along, especially since he is the only one here who can actually see her. As she stares, he brings up a solid point. The mind's eye is his. He won it fair and square, but shockingly, she does not even care. That powerful relic means absolutely nothing to her now. He can just keep it. "Consider it a wedding gift for my future husband," she says. Wait, what? The terrifying evil spirit suddenly has a crush on him. It is totally wild. He used to look completely unpleasant, but now she thinks he is actually pretty hot. This completely grosses him out. He instantly starts to question her creepy behavior. Like, is that why she stares so hard whenever he is sleeping? Oh, it gets worse. She is about to make things even crazier. She taunts him, suggesting that if he is a real man, he shouldn't hesitate to accept a pure, innocent girl like her as his partner. After all, when they first finalized that contract, it wasn't just his first kiss, it was her first kiss too. And he was the one who took it. The Lord wants absolutely nothing to do with all this affection. So he immediately decides to bolt out of the room, making a desperate dash straight for the door, shouting that he absolutely must leave for the Rila territory, but she insists on tagging along. On the way, they find that Lena has accomplished so much for a girl her age. Her raw, natural talent is so incredible, it is hard to believe she was found with only a single eye, whatever that implies. It is believed that after 1 or 2 months, they will have nothing left to teach her. At least that is what the chief guard says. Meanwhile, the Lord starts. The title of the strongest warrior in the entire kingdom is set to expire in a single month. Lena is incredibly talented, but Hayes is left totally confused by that word. Jard shrugs it off and ignores her. He tells her to inform the chief guard. He will find her a tutor. She is so excited. The helpful little maid runs off to do just that. As they ride along in the caravan, Jard realizes he actually has a few great candidates for the kingdom's strongest position, but then danger strikes. An object zooms directly toward their carriage. Someone is attacking them. An arrow flies straight toward the oblivious maid. She is just sitting there. Fortunately for her, the young lord reacts with absolute lightning speed. He conjures a powerful magic shield. The barrier protects her perfectly. Hayes stares in complete confusion. Her nervous lord is casting magic. She has no clue what is happening. Outside, an enemy shouts. Instantly, the guards spring into action. They must protect Jard at all costs. Hayes finally registers the danger. She tightly grips the deflected arrow. It almost hit her head. More arrows rain down on them. Jard constantly casts defensive spells to protect both himself and his maid. He easily recognizes the bandit attack. They are incredibly foolish to challenge him. That those arrows are easily enough to kill him. For some reason, the maid thinks she has to be useful, so she dives straight in front of the shielded lord to protect him, but Jard warns her that this is incredibly dangerous, demanding to know what she thinks she is doing. It is pure stupidity. All that is going to happen is she will get turned into a pincushion and die, yet she barely cares. She insists that protecting him is her absolute duty, but it is a completely reckless move, and he orders her to stop right now, and then he commands her to sit inside the carriage and wait. If she dares to leave, he will kill her himself. The maid has to reluctantly agree. Extremely angry, the lord steps outside, roaring at his guards, asking who dares to attack him, but his guards quickly tell him that staying out is highly dangerous for him right now. Isabella, seeing this as the perfect moment to strike, asks if he needs any assistance, but he flatly refuses her offer, telling He can handle this himself. He marches forward, pushing past his guards with his shield raised high, heading straight toward the bandits standing just up ahead. One of the outlaws spots him approaching and quickly shouts to their leader, letting him know that they have a magician, but the leader is not surprised. He fully expected this. Of course, their target would have magic support. That is exactly why the masked idiot who hired their crew did so in the first place, because this leader turns out to be none other than Tog, the magician. Murderer Jard overhears their chatter, realizing the masked man is the one his chief guard had warned him about earlier. With a grin, the bandit boss lunges forward, deciding these high and mighty magicians are absolute jokes. He is going to finish them off himself. They even have a total rookie here, and he wants to show the kid exactly how a pro works. Activating his special rotational slashing skill, Tog storms at the Lord, ready to cut him down. He swings his blade with terrifying velocity, aiming right for Jard, but before the strike connects, Jard activates haste to quickly dodge. The Lord immediately tries to fire back with magic missile, but his casting gets interrupted. The brutal bandit leader does not fall for basic magic tricks. He instantly takes another massive, heavy swing straight at the Lord, but the Lord is far sharper than this fool, deploying a shield spell. He protects his head just in time. Now Jard is starting to realize that the magician murderer title is definitely not just for show. Furious, the chief unleashes a relentless barrage of strikes against the young Lord. He quickly deduces that Jard must be at least a fourth-class magician to cast this fast. As the onslaught continues, the young Lord uses his shield to protect himself. The chief knows that if he stops for even a single second, the Lord will counterattack, meaning he must keep the heavy pressure on. He mocks Jard, asking if the attacks are too much for him to block, while the outlaws watch with smug smirks. The terrified knights watch in pure horror, fearing for their lord. Tog plans to make absolutely sure that Jard's mana runs completely dry, but right in the middle of his next move, Jard surprises him by grabbing his attacking weapon with bare hands, stopping him mid-swing. The Lord instantly recognizes the magical artifact he is using as a tool meant exclusively for magicians. The young Lord then admits something rather surprising. He was disappointed. Without his own artifacts, he felt pretty left out, but now he definitely plans to steal this magical artifact, using a body-boosting strength spell. He grabs the device and rips it right off his arm. He tells the bandit leader that all his physical enhancement magic is fully blocked. It is completely useless. Still, the Lord is pretty curious about what he knows regarding the masked accomplice, but he knows the bandit won't say a word, or will he? To his surprise, the terrified bandit cowers, promising to spill absolutely everything if his life is spared. But unfortunately, the Lord has a very strict policy. He is genuinely interested in those secrets, but he has absolutely zero trust in criminals. Locked away, Iki sat miserably in his cell, with nobody but himself to blame for this mess. He slowly recalls a classic merchant proverb: a poor merchant without gold can never buy luck, and right now he has absolutely zero luck. If he had not been so cheap hiring guards, he wouldn't be facing these thugs and a very real threat of execution. Suddenly, Aki overhears a quiet conversation nearby. The masked figure is talking business with Tog about a highly skilled medicine merchant, although the target is well guarded. Tog completely dismisses the warnings with arrogant confidence, claiming his prey is just a fat pig ready to be slaughtered under his heavy axe. Aki watches through his tiny cell window. The masked man hands over half of the total payment, making it clear the rest of the gold only arrives once the job is done. From this brief shady exchange, a massive realization strikes Aki. The medicine that saved the people of the Caria territory was created from simple, mass-producible materials. This clearly meant only one thing: the medicine creator would head straight to Ronella to gain vital leverage. On a high hilltop, Aki spots Tog and the masked plotter waiting. The mysterious informer confirms that his intelligence is entirely solid, and the target will definitely pass through. Aki watches the two cold-blooded killers with complete disgust, recalling how they had already taken 11 lives this week alone. He silently wonders why the heavens cannot just send him a hero. Maybe some smoking hot warrior to fall from the sky and easily demolish the murderous duo, and right on cue, almost like magic. Jard crashes onto the scene like a godsend express delivery. The hero is ready. He was already fully aware of their lazy ambush and proceeds to completely annihilate Tog and his entire crew with effortless power. Aki, watching the glorious action unfold from his small cell window, is instantly smitten by his unexpected savior. He has finally found his warrior, complete with a spectacular grand entrance. Once the dust settles and Tog's gang is finished, Aki immediately rushes out to embrace the medicine man, holding Jard tightly. He refuses to let go while offering endless thanks. Jard appreciates this warm gesture, but begins to feel pretty suffocated by the strength of Aki's grip. Aki finally pulls away, looking totally embarrassed and red-faced, explaining that his overenthusiastic hug was completely unconscious because he was just so overwhelmingly happy. This cute explanation leaves Jard completely speechless. Once that awkward moment finally passed, Jard shared Aki's story with the others. Aki had originally traveled to Caribbean for the booming magic stone market, only to get robbed. The thieves of Tog stripped him clean. Jard immediately apologized for the terrible security. He explained these quiet border roads rarely saw any travelers at all. But Aki quickly waved it off. He already felt like a goner. Jard's sudden arrival was an absolute miracle. Now, this merchant's full name was Arns. He was actually a legendary merchant NPC from the Eastern continent. A truly massive figure, he once bought an entire kingdom with his wealth. His brilliant eye for market trends made him a true trendsetter. Naturally, every single rookie merchant player out there closely followed his lead. The guy did not just play the game, he practically owned the stadium. Still, Jard wondered why such a major powerhouse was wandering his northern borders. To cover Aki's losses, Jard offered him a generous 15% of the profits. All Aki had to do was sell his special potion in the Ronella territory. But Aki declined the money. Instead, he asked for two favors. Seeing Jard's confusion, the merchant quickly reassured his savior. He promised to find the absolute best market for this medicine. Won over by his sheer confidence, Jard agreed with one condition. He reserved the right to decline if the requests were too extreme. Aki happily agreed, but then his confident demeanor suddenly shifted. Looking a bit shy, his first wish was just for Jard to call him Aki. The second wish, he would save that one for a later date. Jard felt a strange sense of déjà vu, recalling his deal with the evil spirit. Still, he agreed to those terms, with the deal officially locked in place. The group headed straight to the Ronella territory to begin work. They quickly set up their sales boxes. Aki noticed Hayes' skeptical look. He explained that despite her doubts, humans would never ignore dungeon wealth, which meant that as soon as the Ronella disease was finally cured, the entire region would see some truly mind-blowing future development. I see, Hayes replied, sounding completely bored by the whole speech. Jard thanked Aki for securing such a perfect spot to start. Aki bashfully replied that this was the least he could do. Even this did not feel like enough. He pointed to a giant barrel. He asked if it held the medicine. Not yet, Jard replied, filling a bottle. He had brewed a rare, highly potent version that could actually boost stats. But this immediately maxed out his daily limit for creation. He would gain no proficiency for 24 hours, just as he expected. It usually took months of hard grind before finding a weird system bug. He handed the bottle over, giving Aki a very specific sales pitch. But wait, who is this next guy? Meet Talon, who looks absolutely terrible. He has a severe case of the Ronella disease and needs help fast. Talon eyes the mysterious medicine, wondering why it costs a whole gold coin. Aki sweetly replies that this is a very special price just for him. Simply because Talon seems like a nice guy, but Talon asks if it is fake. Aki just smiles. With a creepily sweet smile, Aki asked if Tolan had ever caught him in a lie. Still highly suspicious, Tolan ultimately bought the medicine, after all spending one more gold coin didn't really matter since he was going to die anyway. The second Aki grabbed the coin, he thanked him and immediately, like a shady dealer, in a dark alley offered Tolan a contract. This agreement clearly stated that ownership of the medicine would be transferred to Tolan. Tolan signed the contract and immediately gulped the liquid down. Jard quickly stepped in, warning him it would take exactly 30 minutes to kick in and told Tolan to go rest. Still highly suspicious, Tolan muttered he only bought the cure because of Aki's massive reputation, but if this turned out a fraud, then Jard cut him off, betting his entire wrist and offering 1,000 gold refund. Finally satisfied, Tolan left. Aki quickly departed to spread his strategic bait. While Jard and Hayes continued crafting, the production skill bug was working perfectly. Jard could easily bypass the 24-hour proficiency penalty by cleverly dumping that penalty onto the buyer through the signed contract. This insane loop let him keep leveling up and making more medicine without any pauses. It was a loop only a gaming genius could exploit. With the medicine crafting underway, Aki had been gone for 2 hours. Hayes complained he was late, but Jard confidently assured her he would return shortly. But right then, a strange, thunderous noise suddenly caught their attention and ripped straight from a zombie horror movie. A massive horde came rushing right at them. Hayes stammered, asking if that terrifying crowd barreling toward them was actually targeting them. Jard was left completely speechless. Meanwhile, Aqua was gleefully running alongside Tolan, their completely cured first customer, with a massive stampede of eager buyers hot on their heels, with everyone begging to buy the miraculous cure. Hayes got knocked flat in the absolute chaos, and Jard quickly caught her, only to use her as a temporary human shield. Against the wild crowd struggling for a spot, the desperate mob praised their miraculous medicine, shouting that God had surely blessed this territory. But Jard's mood quickly soured as the crowd started insulting Kribby as a whole, muttering they never visited because they thought it had absolutely no future. Now it seemed the Lord had finally wised up. This backhanded insult annoyed Jard to no end, but Aki was already in total control of the chaotic situation. He announced he would sell them the medicine right now, but made it clear that after today, they must visit the Caria territory to get more. He pointed out this was a massive plus since there were barely any high-level hunters there, but plenty of monsters. It would serve as a highly profitable playground for every single hunter here. The hunters immediately began chugging the medicine down, and to sweeten the whole deal even more, Aki announced that if they bought the cure directly in Kia, it would cost 39 gold, making it way cheaper than the Adama Empire's version, which cost 100 gold and barely even worked. In a masterclass of crowd control, Aki ordered everyone to line up immediately, which they gladly did, literally throwing their gold coins at the triumphant merchant. Back at the remote cabin, Hayes was snoring away, utterly defeated by the day. Meanwhile, Jard was lost in thought, calculating the success of today's sales. He pulled in 12 trillion gold. That is worth over 11.2 billion in his past life. He knew monster hunters are basically walking wallets, and honestly, you can't blame him for staring calculations when Aki approached, asking if Jard was happy with his massive profits. Jard just asked Aki why he was still awake, wearing a cheeky smile. Aki joked about his own curiosity. Jard then remembered that Aki still had a second wish he had not revealed to anyone yet. For that request, Aki humbly asked to become Lord Jard's servant, specifically to work directly at the top. Jard paused. What did that even mean? Aki explained that even though he was just a young trader starting in his 20s, with limited experience, if Jard trusted him, he would drive the entire North to the absolute peak of the financial market. Jard considered the bold request, noting that Aki was brave for someone who recently let bandits steal every single coin, leaving him completely empty-handed. Still, Jard genuinely wanted to test the young man's talent. He wanted to ensure Aki knew that climbing to the very top is no easy feat. No easy feat, Aki accepted. Jard smiled, saying how refreshing it was to find someone aiming so incredibly high. To build a real future for Kibi, since they desperately needed a leader. At the top right now, Jard gladly granted Aki his wish. The trader bowed in deep gratitude before stepping out, while Jard told him to get some proper rest before they traveled back to their home territory. Homeland. Jard stared out at the cold night sky. A warm breeze swept by. By morning, business was already booming. At the medicine factory, Hayes was working hard as the facility quickly reached an impressive level 35, fortuitously a brand new upgrade. Automated their production line, allowing them to pump out healing potions at an unbelievable speed. With 5,000 gold invested, Aki could now mass-produce treatment for 24 patients a day on full automation. The output has multiplied tenfold, and each cure sells for 39 gold. That nets a clean profit of 900 gold, absolute highway robbery, right? For any regular merchant, since this was the only reliable cure available. Swarms of monster hunters began flooding into the nightmare forest for active hunting. As the supply of Aki's medicine grew, the number of people trying to avoid the region dropped off sharply. Outside merchants heard rumors of this miracle drug, and they quickly visited the territory to secure their own supply. Slowly but surely, Kibi was growing prosperous. Far beyond Jard's original design, this medical breakthrough elevated the entire region's economic status, cementing Kibi as the central hub. Hours later, Jard was riding through the freezing woods, accompanied by the demon spirit Isabella, who complained loudly. She demanded to know why he always wandered off alone, especially to freezing lands with no signs of life. Isabella suddenly reached a wild, terrifying conclusion, loudly screaming that he must be trying to end it all because he simply couldn't stand her. She hated her groom acting tragically. She preferred his current handsome appearance. He was better than some soggy ghost. Jard tried to soothe her anxious mind. He only wanted to defeat Lick Deluk, telling her there was no need to worry. Isabella snapped back. This was worse. She called him a cursed black horse. If he got caught, his soul would be taken, forcing him into eternal servitude. Jard just asked if she really believed he would lose to Deluk, who knew all of the stage's predictable moves. Jard already had a plan. He knew Deluk was locked in a sealed chamber surrounded by heavy cannons. These weapons were custom-built for him, Jard remembered from the game Paradiso. During the outbreak in Songma Daejeon, when the Demon King chose Deluk, releasing him from the seal to gain immortality during the major storylines that followed all those casualties, a terrifying special event unfolded. Focused entirely on the curse of Lick Deluk, Jard had to act fast. If the monster was truly that tanky, he must destroy him before his sword lost its magical charge. Of course, the massive divine feedback might kill them both. But he was prepared. Hearing his logic, Isabella sighed and realized something. Jard was way too strange. He knew far too many deep secrets. She openly wondered if he was some otherworldly monster pretending to be human. Jard instantly tried to brush off her incredibly accurate guess, nervously and poorly lying about his true identity. Soon, they arrived. Reaching Lickdeluk's frozen sanctuary, Jard entered a dark cave, searching for a hidden tiny crevice. It was notoriously hard to find. Isabella watched him, playfully teasing that he looked just like a cute dog sniffing for bones. She actually liked it, but still questioned why they were in this cave. He explained that taking the main path straight to Deluk's lair meant climbing a freezing mountain. Endless hordes of aggressive skeletons guarded that path. He could not handle them alone. He pointed to a frozen corpse nearby. But watch this, he smiled, suddenly shoving his hand directly into solid stone. Isabella. Panicked instantly, she screamed Jard's name as the rock seemingly swallowed him whole. But to her shock, Jard just popped his head right back out, revealing a secret passageway. This was a clever gaming glitch Jard exploited, using unrendered map boundaries to completely bypass the standard level design. It was highly risky, but it was their only way to beat Deluk. Jard welcomed Isabella into Deluk's hidden treasure chamber, loaded with endless riches. Isabella gasped, was all of this actual gold, staring at the massive pile of wealth. Jard explained it was left by thousands of failed adventurers, making this absurdly huge jackpot a pretty standard sight. Better yet, he counted more than 10 unique legendary artifacts scattered around. Finally spotting his primary target, Jard picked up a bizarre-looking ring. He described it as greedy, mischievous, and weirdly soft. Isabella was totally unimpressed by the plain band, so Jard explained its insane secret. It was an infinite subspace inventory bag. To prove his point, Jard unleashed the seal, letting the endless mountain of gold spill out. She realized they could easily rob the boss completely blind using this. After all, a mere lick was no match for a supreme evil spirit like her. Jard wondered why Isabella suggested stealing the treasures when all of the items in the room belonged to the dead and they could easily take their places instead. He said this while casually putting on Saint Yi poses. Ring, Wise Gorze's necklace, and Queen Marielle's earring, an action that made Isabella realize he was enjoying this morbid treasure hunt way more than he should. Meanwhile, deeper in the cave, the cursed magician Lick Deluk was lamenting how he lost his legendary powers to a holy saint, and now he could not escape this frozen prison, held down by glowing white chains. He wondered what he would do if he ever broke free. Naturally, turning every single human on the continent undead was his top priority. Just then, a hand suddenly reached out, patting the dark mage's head like he was some misbehaving kid. A voice told Deluk that he was only dreaming of grand schemes because of his inspirational stone chair, and that it was all just a cheap illusion. Enraged, Deluk demanded to know who this voice belonged to. Jard asked who he was, calling himself a hero of this world, before instantly firing a blast that melted the Lick's skin, with his flesh completely vaporized, leaving nothing but an ugly skeleton. Deluk quickly changed his tune and demanded answers again, demanding to know exactly where Jard came from and how he could possibly bypass all of his ancient magic and traps. He was talking about the legendary gear Jard wore, specifically Queen Marielle's earrings, which had stats to boost charm by 100 points, increase raw attraction, or unleash a deadly seduction ability. Then Wise Gorze's necklace gave another 100 charm points, ensuring that the draw of high-tier magic is never exhausted while granting total control over physical and basic desires. Finally, there was the Ring of Saint Epinos, which boosted his intelligence by 50 points and increased his attraction by 50, and could grant a divine power with magic by doubling his attraction stats. Now, leaping right back into this clash, our battle with Lick Deluk had already begun in a messy, chaotic yet deeply satisfying fashion. Jard had just unleashed a heavy blast that ripped the Lick's flesh completely off, exposing the bare bones underneath. This left the ancient magician utterly shocked, not because of any pain, since bones do not feel, but from the complete disbelief of how an outsider like Jard had easily bypassed every single one of his ancient traps and high-tier defensive spells. His pride was shattered straight to the bone. While Deluk struggled to comprehend this, Jard capitalized on the sudden shock, swiftly backing away to maintain a safe, tactical distance from this secure vantage. He analyzed the Lick, a former wizard who traded away his humanity. For absolute strength, usually powerful creatures like a Lick operate through an avatar, controlled from a safe, high-energy soul vessel. But here is the catch. Unfortunately for Deluk, he had lost his original soul vessel to a saint long ago, leaving him vulnerable. Now he was permanently bound to this weak, severely degraded body. This was massive news, if Jard could manage to crush him now. Resurrection was impossible, he would be gone for good, with this advantage. Armed with vital game knowledge, Jard charges straight at the cursed magician. He stays highly cautious, keeping a safe distance between them. This prevents the deadly life-draining magic that Deluch uses. As they close in, the cursed magician aggressively fires black magic. Jard skillfully dodges every single blast. His movements are incredibly smooth. He is no amateur. His actions show his vast experience. He has fought and died to Deluch countless times in the game. Now for his counterattack, Jard unleashes the power of his ring. Using the ring of Saint Yapinos, he fires 3 magical arrows. Deluch is completely unimpressed. He scoffs at the low-level spell. He calls it trashy magic. This arrogant attitude will backfire. Mid-laugh, one of those supposedly trashy arrows flies true. It hits him straight in the head, causing Deluch to reel. He stumbles back in pain, completely questioning Jard's reckless strategy. Why be so careless? A simple class 3 mage like Jard should have exhausted his mana reserves by now. The Lick mentally calculates the energy costs. He cannot understand this massive barrage. Worse still, endless holy flames are burning right on his bones. They are actively devouring his divine power. Something is wrong. This makes no sense. In this exact moment of confusion, Deluch spots the source of his agony. His bony gaze snaps to Jard's finger, confirming his fears. It is Saint Yapino's ring. It glints on Jard's hand. Deluch was robbed, but the puzzle is incomplete. How could this mere human have found his secret treasure? This situation is too chaotic. It is too much for his ancient mind. He quickly decides that the only way to restore order is to eliminate Jard right here. To conjure a highly destructive magic sphere, but before the spell could even materialize, it shattered. Jard was faster. He instantly countered with his own spell, expertly blasting the magical weapon straight out of Duke's hands, leaving the Lick completely bewildered while landing another solid strike on the shocked skeleton. It seemed Jard's aggressive and rapid strategy of attacking Duke before he could finish casting a high-level spell was actually working, while he knew there was no single way to destroy a Lick in one hit. Jard confidently knew that keeping up this intense pressure would secure his victory. The battle was his to win. Duke, however, quickly realized from Jard's tactical moves that this clever human knew his own limits very well. But in a wave of sheer arrogance, he decided it didn't matter since this entire place belonged entirely to him anyway. With a booming shout, he raised his massive army of undead knights, demanding to know how they dared to stand around while an intruder entered their master's sanctuary, and then ordered them to punish the invader. This sudden onslaught of monsters sent a heavy wave of panic straight through Isabella, knowing exactly what these creatures were capable of. Jard, however, barely flinched. He already knew about the undead army was a trap all along, but Jard calmly wondered if their attack patterns might differ now, especially since the Lick had not been able to fully resurrect inside his current limited body. Duke, basking in this dramatic moment, taunted Jard, thanking him for letting him feel that agonizing rage. Once again, now that the holy flames of the initial strike seemed to have faded, the monster was eager to finally show Jard his true strength. He snarled, unleashing his massive, growing skeleton army straight toward the interloper. Jard was already moving, though, easily slipping past the wave of the undead soldiers. He knew he had to force Duke into close combat to prevent him from casting those incredibly dangerous, high-level spells, spotting a real opening. And sensing Jard was in a tight spot, Isabella offered to help. She asked him to step back and let her take over, spotting the largest, strongest undead knight leading the massive, approaching horde. In a swift flash, she possessed it, immediately unleashing the massive puppet. Against the unsuspecting skeletal soldiers, she genuinely hated how she looked now. Trapped inside a spooky, dusty skeleton frame, but she absolutely loved the immense, incredible reach and raw, devastating power of this temporary body. Duke, thoroughly annoyed that a mere spirit dared interfere in his personal duel, instantly shattered her new bone shell with a heavy, concentrated magical blast. But that split-second distraction was all Jard needed. While the lick focused on the annoying spirit, Jard fired a searing lightning bolt, ripping straight through the scattered remains of the skeleton army. Not falling for the same trick twice, Duke quickly raised a heavy barrier to protect himself, but honestly, that shielding was not going to save him. Jard was no amateur. He had cast 2 spells at once, with the second, much more powerful delayed bolt ripping straight through the barrier and slamming directly into Duke's chest. Shocked and hurting, the lick wondered how this could happen. Jard, with his typical smug professor attitude, replied that it was just his personal magic style, and Duke had fallen for it. Not once but twice now, utilizing the heavy power boost from his ring. St. Eupinos, Jard cast the most devastating spell he could muster, a final concentrated burst of energy, frying the helpless lick right where he stood. He calmly pointed out that even treating this like a game, the monster still fell for the exact same trick. Some people just never learn, our hero thought. Duke's body slumped, heavily weakened and seemingly dead. Isabella materialized again, completely shocked that they won against a legendary lick, praising Jard's absolute genius for the victory. But Jard remained cautious as he approached the defeated Duke. Once close enough, the skeletal monster suddenly bolted upright. The powerful undead was only baiting him, launching a desperate surprise strike. He lunged, but our hero reacted instantly, bashing the monster's head with his trusty staff, knocking some sense into the ancient skeleton and reminding him that a cheap, cliché sneak attack was not going to kill him. Jard then grabbed the lick by his chest plate and with immense effort flooded his body with a torrent of unfiltered magic. In that terrifying moment, Delu actually wondered if he was going to perish like this at the hands of a mere human. The taste of death after becoming a lick specifically to avoid it terrified him. His deepest instincts screamed at him to escape, but the chains binding him to his avatar prevented any escape. But right then, his ancient resolve suddenly hardened. He realized that fear and death were concepts that meant absolutely nothing to him. He was immortal. The very thought of defeat was hilarious. To his arrogant, ancient mind, he was the legendary plague-bringer, the master and deliverer of death. Chanting made his dark magic grow stronger, feeding on the pain and sheer terror of his close call. This was Delu. Now stronger, far more focused than ever, no longer desperate. He was eager to play with the little magician. The battle reached its peak. But unfortunately for Jard, Delu was not holding back. He relentlessly unleashed devastating spell after spell, trapping the young magician in a purely defensive state. Jard had clearly angered the lick, who unleashed a catastrophic, high-grade spell, practically commanding Jard to die. But thanks to Isabella, who instantly leaped in to block the hit, Jard would have been toast or just a pile of dust. Fed up with this sassy skeleton interference, the lick pulled a classic horror move. He summoned deadly underground roots to deal with her. Thorny appendages rose one by one, grabbing the skeleton Isabella possessed, knowing she was completely bested. Isabella gave Jard a quick apology and cast a deeply worried glance, asking if he was truly sure he could defeat the lick. Jard, however, radiated a level of confidence that bordered on absolute, pure cockiness. He shot back that Delu stood zero chance against him in this State sure he was flustered by the massive, potent attacks of the lick. And dramatic entrance at first, but Delu had not changed his basic attack patterns, just like every other monster in his favorite game. Jard knew everything about Delu, from his tells to his dodge routine. His ego severely bruised by this insolent, fast-moving little insect, Delu. Decided he was done talking, he immediately tried to end the entire fight by trying to squash Jard with a massive magical palm. But, just like a quick-footed bug, Jard easily stepped back to evade the strike. Delu was genuinely shocked by how easily he dodged, but if there was one thing Jard was confident in, it was handling Delu. Delu, however, doubted it, questioning how a weakling with trash magic who spent the entire battle dodging could ever hope to defeat the great, ancient and highly feared Lick. Turns out our quick-footed hero was baiting him all along. The moment Delu stepped close enough to speak, Jard unleashed his actual Class 4 magic, completely catching the ancient undead by surprise. In the blink of an eye, Delu realized he had been thoroughly outplayed. "I told you I was confident," Jard said, hitting him with a power move, magic strengthening holy chain bond. Delu screamed in agony as Jard coolly explained that a hollow monster without any real substance was an easy target. Next, Jard combined the holy chains with the light attribute amplification forces Duke to feel the holy blessing of the gods flowing through his body. With a final deadly combo, Jard erases the very essence of Duke. All that remains of the once feared ancient magician is his pitiful skull resting on the throne that was once his prison. Isabella, now free, pops out of the remnants of her skeleton host, confirming that the devil won't be coming out anytime soon. Jard, ever the victor, commands the Lick to give up, but Duke, cocky as always, fires back that giving up is his choice, and Jard has no idea what awaits him. The residual spirit of the Lick sneers, asking if he even realizes what he will have to deal with from now on. This attempt to instill fear in Jard completely fails, because our protagonist already knows all the stats. Duke was merely an extreme 4th-class magician, while Jard is currently a solid 4th class himself. Duke is genuinely shocked by the expanse of Jard's vast knowledge. He knew all this, yet stood back to watch him die. Sensing that Jard desires something deep within his soul, Duke asks what the young man truly wants. Without any hesitation, Jard replies simply, he wants the most powerful symbol of the monarch. Despite his pitiful state, Duke cannot help but laugh. He would have laughed his ass off if he still had one, because Jard's request is nothing but a joke. The quick-footed bug must be drunk to even suggest such a thing. Duke cannot comprehend why Jard is trying to accomplish what neither the creator gods nor the cruel devil himself could complete. He finds the idea highly entertaining, promising to watch him burn in hell. Those are Duke's parting words as his body crumbles to ash, leaving only a mysterious bracelet. Just like that, the ancient magician is officially dead. Beside him, Isabella, ever pragmatic, asks Jard what the absolute scariest part of the duel was. She points out that many people are far stronger than he is, but he never seems to care. It is as if he knows he will surpass them all eventually. Jard ignores her, quietly focusing on examining his new bracelet. He knew he needed Duke's legendary relic, but seeing it up close, it is even better than expected. A growth-type artifact, as any seasoned gamer knows. These items are the absolute best. He lovingly holds his new prize like a long-lost child, declaring that no better artifact exists on Earth. Welcoming it to the team, Isabella completely ignores his little moment, her attention immediately caught by a strange, dusty book on the floor, and she quickly points it out so they can inspect it together. Jard picks it up and Isabella giggles, noting it looks exactly like something the dead Lick would drop, but Jard is not so sure. In all his years of gaming knowledge, Duke never dropped a book like this. He inspects the mysterious item closely and reads the title, Lick Duke. Revival spell. Isabella immediately starts asking some pretty serious questions about their master-servant contract. She wonders if a resurrected being could ever actually have a real relationship with their summoner. Does the contract truly make disobedience impossible, and if Jard dies, will she go down with him? Jard, with the emotional depth of a puddle, simply tells her yes. That was when Isabel finally realized what this magical contract actually did. It made her Jard's slave, absolutely not her plan. This definitely was not the dynamic she wanted, leaving her wondering what he had planned. Jard finally drops his first big request. He wants her to tie him up incredibly tight, which she immediately protests. But that mental image, honestly, it is way too good to pass up. Next, he wants her to blast him with cursed magic so he can resist. Isabel turns bright red, absolutely shocked at what her master is into. For the grand finale, they are going to repeat those steps forever. The goal is to quickly level up their magic resistance and pain tolerance. Normally, hiring a top-tier mage for this training would cost a fortune. But thanks to this brilliant contract loophole, it is completely free for them. Jard wraps up his pitch, extremely proud of this cost-saving hack. Isabel, however, officially has a brand new reason to hate him. Honestly, she cannot believe just how incredibly cheap this new master is. Still judging him, she asks if that is really everything he wants. Jard tries to smooth things over, urging her to give it a shot. Isabel finally relents, admitting she was tired of her boring routine anyway. With their training set, they head off to search for the revival vats. Isabel nervously asks if they are starting right now, feeling totally unprepared. But as they search, Isabel suddenly undergoes a strange physical transformation. She shifts directly into her human form. Since she is still uncomfortable in this new body, Jard carries her. Nestled in his arms, she requests a new name, Isabel. Jard, being a logical gamer, questions how she even remembers that name. Especially since her memories were supposed to be completely wiped out. But she does not know or care, demanding he just hurry up. She needs to get out of the freezing cold as soon as possible. She then wonders why the perverted Duke did not leave her any clothes. That insult is definitely enough to make Duke roll over in his grave. Jard is actually happy to hear her ranting like usual. It proves her spicy personality has not changed one bit. She just sounds slightly more emotional as they walk deeper. They reach a creepier area where Isabel notices a pile of bodies. Jard explains the cave is infested with traps, but most are disabled now. Suddenly, they stop as they come across a truly bizarre sight. A mysterious woman floats silently inside a massive glass tank right here. Isabel curiously asks if the woman died from one of the traps. Jard replies that he is not entirely sure either. Isabel hopes the woman does not become an evil spirit like her. Spirit life is tough, you lose your senses and feel eternally cold. Then a brilliant, wild idea pops right into her head. She asks if she can simply possess this mysterious woman's body. That way she can finally start living a much cooler life. She is ready to eat delicious food and wear beautiful dresses. Jard wondered when the story changed from all these new ideas, but Isabel insisted it would be fun. He didn't doubt her, but the danger was still very real. Dangerous, all right, she replied softly, snuggling. Deeper into his back, Jard smiled, truly glad to have a trustworthy sidekick at last. As they left, they quickly checked their loot from the battle, in this great hall. They found Dutch's bracelet, Nightmare, a growth-type artifact with the unique ability to change shape. Jard also took the Lick Dutch Resurrection spellbook, kind of a bummer, it only worked once, and the adult Garcia ring, a set piece that Dutch unfortunately only had one of, and finally the title of the one who leaps over traps, a hard-earned reward. No shortcuts for that one. Meanwhile, inside the Lord of Rella's private study, we find Lord Batman sporting a magnificent, highly maintained mustache. He was having a deeply tense discussion right now with his Scrawny servant about the troubled Carabea territory, this wannabe. Batman, proud of his mustache, demanded to know why they had lost even more monster hunters from their lands. The servant, sweating hard, could only confirm the awful truth, since Carabea had managed to produce a cure for the Rianella plague. Hunters were defecting to a place where they wouldn't actually die. This cold logic sent Lord Batman straight into a fury, his neck veins popping instantly. He shrieked that he already knew that, which was exactly why he paid a fortune to hire a thug named Tog to steal that cure, a mission that failed miserably. The anxious servant stammered that Carabea kept the recipe under tight lock, even with the small sample they stole. Recreating the formula was proving impossible. That makes total sense, considering the recipe was never supposed to surface for another 10 plague-filled years. Snapping completely at his servant's failure, Lord Batman abruptly stood up, towering over the terrified, scrawny man. He pointed a shaking finger at his subordinate, demanding to know how the man could deliver such terrible news so calmly. What in the world was he even paying him for? With a sudden, angry sweep of his arm, he ordered him out, throwing books at the fleeing servant. Nothing says I am in charge like throwing classic literature at someone left alone in his quiet office. The furious Lord Batman crouched over his desk and cursed out jarred. How did that guy dare to mess with the balance of their world, acting all high and mighty? Without knowing the true fears of this place was unforgivable. If Jard wants a game, two can play. Meanwhile, over in Maya's dark lair, we find our other distinguished antagonist, Horus, sitting on his massive throne with a beautiful girl on his lap. He discussed the upcoming war with his top henchmen, asking how many soldiers they could deploy immediately if war broke out. Right now, the henchmen quickly replied they had about 1,239 soldiers on hand. Baldy stared at this number for a second and knew it was way too small. They desperately needed more men, especially since Jard was now a fourth-class magician instead of the massive, doomed, food-obsessed pig he used to be. Baldy regretted with the burning, fierce heat of 1,000 suns that he didn't just order Gargos to poison him when he had the chance way before the former noble decided to change his life. His henchman, being naturally curious, asked what actually happened to Gargos. It turns out the drunkard was swiftly sent to the afterlife by Sir Peru, who was desperate to wipe out the walking, talking thread of Gargos, exposing them. Just then, a messenger loudly announced the arrival of Horus. The renowned guest magician, Akron, the man of the hour, brought 3 pricey third-class magicians with him, which cost Baldy a truly massive fortune, but no price was too high to guarantee Jard's downfall. Akron then suggested launching an immediate, surprise attack on the Caribbean territory, catching their enemy completely off guard, which sounded wonderful to Baldy. It seemed everyone was lining up to take a shot at Jard. Meanwhile, back with our heroes, the young lord and his party were traveling through the dense forest. Four Eyes, the ever-cautious companion, suggested this path might not be the smartest idea, especially since Jard had been building his influence mostly through peaceful diplomacy rather than aggressive, uninvited trespassing. These woods themselves were a major conflict between Rianella and Majorica, a northern region wedged tightly right between Baldy's land and a rival noble's area. Jard simply replied they weren't here on any official business, but to strike a deal with the local tribe. His cautious companion wondered if they were going to meet elves. Jard only replied that they would find out very soon. Watch on a nearby ledge stood dark silhouettes. Watch the party before Four Eyes can even finish processing what they are looking at. Small aggressive creatures appear. These red goblins immediately launch a sudden attack, much to the party's absolute shock. They quickly realize they are completely surrounded, but they recover instantly, knowing they must protect Their young lord, no matter the cost, Raucous immediately takes charge and orders his men to form a defensive perimeter. This is met with looks of total confusion, setting a static line against Monster's leaves. Four Eyes wondering if the leader has finally gone clinically insane. Still the soldiers obey, but instead of an attack, an elderly goblin leader suddenly appears, welcoming Jard and his party with shocking civility. To their territory, he introduces himself as Iban, leader of these Red Goblins, the guy we can pretty much just call Big Red. Funky Eyebrows watches the crazy exchange in absolute shock. Astonishingly, Big Red speaks the Nashu dialect perfectly. The old chief admits he is actually impressed, since his expectations for Jard were incredibly low. Buried in the dirt, basically, he asks why Jard even called this meeting. Jard states plainly that they want to establish a diplomatic relationship. To acquire their iron and gold, Big Red erupted in laughter, roaring that this was the first time in his incredibly long life that a human had actually offered their hand first. Then came the big question: did they bring enough to satisfy them as payment? Jard confidently ordered one of his guards to bring forward the goods. What followed was cart after cart of nightmare stones. Jard seemed completely confident in his offer, but his men were visibly anxious, and with good reason. These nightmare stones were one of the absolute lowest value items a hunter could gather from the nightmare forest. Beautiful but totally worthless. Reikis silently prayed the goblins wouldn't see this pathetic offer as a direct insult. Everyone held their breath as Big Red examined the cargo. At first, the goblin leader looked absolutely livid. Reikis and his men recoiled in terror, already fearing the worst kind of painful death, but to their absolute shock, Big Red was actually quite thrilled with the gifts. Jard and Big Red shook hands, sealing the deal. The goblin chief thanked Jard for trekking such a massive distance to bring such precious items to his land. They quickly signed a formal contract on the spot and officially became sworn brothers of the North. Jard hoped their relationship would only grow stronger, a sentiment the chief heartily shared. Big Red then ordered his warriors to bring out the payment of iron and gold. The goblins rushed in with heavy bags of precious metals. Big Red did not mind the exchange one bit, fully convinced none of it compared to the pure beauty of the nightmare stones. As he lovingly stared at the rocks, his heart pounded with the prospect of polishing them. Talk about a completely subjective sense of value. Meanwhile, a rather greedy member of Jard's party had a dark thought, wondering why they did not just take this land for themselves, given the sheer abundance of ores. His thoughts were suddenly cut off by Big Red, who announced a massive celebration for their esteemed guests turned brothers. He then declared there was no more need for protection, so the hidden army could finally step forward. From the surrounding shadows, a massive army of dark elves emerged. The sight of this universally hostile race immediately forced that greedy party member to quickly retract those dangerous thoughts. He instantly realized Jard must have known about the dark elves, which explained his peaceful diplomacy and negotiation. As always, Jard knew everything. Our main character had always been aware that another race lived further north than the goblins, the dark elves of Totter Island. They could never be discounted despite their minimal contact with humans. The geography was simple. North of Carib lay the monsters, then the goblins, and finally the dark elves. Jard knew these two northern races had a close enough relationship to form a solid treaty, a fitting arrangement for Big Red. He also knew that if they had carelessly attacked, their bodies would have quickly disappeared, never to be seen again, likely fed to some grumpy monster. Jard's party soon found themselves gathered around a roaring bonfire with Big Red and his crew, who turned out to be a lively mix of goblins, random monsters, and dark elves. It was then that Four Eyes asked the million-dollar question: how exactly did Jard know these goblins valued cheap nightmare stones as much as actual gold? He only responded with a nervous, non-committal laugh. Hard guy to read. Jard looked over the wild, lively scene playing out right before. Calling over Reikis to ask for a quick status report on the army, and the smithies, Reikis quickly explained that they completely lacked the raw materials needed to forge new weapons. For the fresh recruits, instead, they had to shift their entire focus to repairing and patching up the mediocre gear they already had, so Jard firmly ordered that once they secured the refined iron from the Red Goblins, they must immediately pivot to mass-producing swords, spare weapons, and arrows first, making sure not a single ounce of ingots went to waste. He told Reikis to take some of the newly acquired gold to fund the military, officially appointing him as their new head of recruitment, effective immediately. That is when Big Red suddenly interrupted the conversation, asking point-blank if they were planning a strike on Mayura. This suddenly startled Jard, who wondered if he was just being shockingly loud for a secret meeting. Big Red easily realized only an impending war would require such a massive business deal. Honestly, he thought Jard was playing it smart here, since sooner or later Mayor Rorica's filthy, corrupt, and greasy crime nest was surely going to inevitably expand all the way to Caribbean, not wanting to get on Big Red's bad side permanently. Jard immediately apologized for having a hidden motive behind their trade. Big Red, jolly as ever, just laughed it off, saying there was absolutely nothing to stress about. He was just shooting the breeze. Plus, he personally detested Horace and his shiny bald head, so he was rooting for Jard, the jolly giant merchant, then raised a celebratory glass to the glory of Carib, much to the utter shock of his beastly and dark elf companions. They all cheered, and afterward Jard sat back, contemplating the brutal war that was bound to come. Meanwhile, back in Nazu territory, the calendar flipped to March 14th, year 1414, exactly 4 weeks after her dramatic resurrection and subsequent name change to Isabel. Jard had crafted a massive lie to cover her sudden appearance, introducing her to Hayes as an old academy classmate from his brief school days. It was a complete lie, but the perpetually mischievous Isabel actually seemed pretty pleased with it. She quickly settled into the manor life while mastering illusion magic. It was a skill perfect for showing enemies their absolute deepest, worst nightmares. She gladly tested this out during training by projecting a horrifying, lifelike image of a giant spider at Jard. No doubt she was going to have a ton of fun with that. Plus, thanks to her relentless training onslaughts, Jard's overall magic defense rose to a highly respectable 34 points, making training a near-death experience. Still sweating in the training room, Jard offered Isabel some sweet candy. She narrowed her eyes, instantly suspicious, and asked if he wanted to fatten her up. Jard just calmly explained in his absolute, most matter-of-fact tone that the candy was an anniversary gift. He told her this date was set by ancient tradition as the exact day a man was required to give candy to a girl. Isabel, an ancient being whose age spanned thousands of years, scoffed, claiming she did not remember this day ever being special. Jard quickly replied that it actually was, at least in the calendar of the Eastern continent, explaining that this was a day when men returned the favor to women who had gifted them the previous month. Isabel, sensing a perfect opportunity, teased him, asking if he was finally warming up to her feminine charms. Unfortunately for her, that was not even close. Jard stated flatly that he had given candy to all the women in the manor, treating the romantic gesture with the emotional warmth of a tax audit, a complete romantic buzzkill. But Isabel, unwilling to accept this unromantic truth, popped a piece of candy in her mouth and told Jard he was hilarious for using people to boost his power. Yet, remaining so unwilling to open his heart, she forcefully reminded him, while aggressively closing the distance, how their lives were interwoven by the mind's eye and how their contract was eternally bound by that highly problematic kiss they had shared. With a tight grip on his neck, she pulled Jard close, determined to kiss him again, candy and all. Jard immediately resisted, pushing her back, protesting that the way she phrased olive. This made them sound like they were trapped in some marriage contract. And so began the wild struggle, an epic battle against a sticky kiss from a spirit, with Jard fighting hard to keep his distance from her. Naturally, Jard easily overpowered her superior spiritual strength and ordered the bright red Isabel to stop playing around, but she was not. Finished, she cast a powerful desire spell on him. Jard tried, bless him, to resist the sudden rush of urges, but we all know how. This ends. The intense bedroom workout that followed was enough to help Jard achieve a coveted level 5 enlightenment. Talk about a weird power-up. A while later, Jard sat in his study, planning his next big project. His grand scheme was to find and recruit the brightest young talents of the future before any of his rivals could reach them. He wanted to secure the lucrative rewards from the priest disciplinary system, which compensates the teacher based on student progress. The cap was 4 disciples, and Jard already had his perfect 4. Ready to go, everything was great. He had Isabel, his talented student, who was making incredible progress. Then came Lena, who gracefully accepted every single task, and Mia, who treated all training like a fun game. Jard used every clever game master trick he had learned over the years to steadily develop his disciples, keeping his ultimate plan completely on track. However, his perfect plan was about to hit a major roadblock. The culprit was his 4th student, Hayes, the kind-hearted maid, who still viewed herself as nothing more than a servant. Hayes had made almost zero progress despite her best efforts, which she lacked in confidence. She made up for with a fierce determination to become the top healer. In the world, a healer is heavily specialized in one thing: healing. It is an elite profession with barely more than 5 practitioners. On the entire Nasu continent, Hayes had a very long road ahead. Her main obstacle was her own self-doubt. Fed up, Jard grabbed her strange hair antenna and demanded to know why she still felt worthless as just a maid, especially after everything they had been through. Together, later on, Jard was having a quiet tea with Funky Eyebrows. They were discussing Hayes's mental block, knowing she had incredible potential. She had massive potential, but to truly awaken her healing powers, she had to live the role with her entire heart and soul. Funky Eyebrows pointed out the obvious. This was going to be brutal, especially since she had only been a low-ranking maid for 23 years. Jard agreed, sensing some kind of deep internal block, holding her back, forcing her into a constant state of self-doubt. He wanted to guide her to the light, but had absolutely no idea how. That is when Funky Eyebrows stepped in with one of his trademark, incredibly tedious lectures. Sure, he thanked Jard for helping, but insisted he simply trust Hayes, because she had already poured her entire heart and soul into proving her absolute loyalty. That exhausting speech actually triggered something in Jard, a brilliant, highly questionable spark. How had he not thought of this before? Hayes was completely unique. All she required was a little professional pressure. He rushed off to find her. But before he could even plan his next move, a cold blade flashed. An assassin lunged straight for him, blade raised. Chaos instantly struck. Hayes burst onto the scene, screaming in horror. Her master was bleeding out. A wave of pure terror washed over her. She sobbed, demanding answers. The nearby guard simply shouted that Jard was ambushed, and he was fading fast. Her first instinct was to run for a doctor, but it was useless. A single look at the horrific, bloody gash on his neck told her the truth. There was absolutely no way they would make it to a real doctor in time, right here. In this exact moment of sheer, heart-stopping panic, she finally realized her duty. She was a healer, and she had to act, dropping to her knees beside Jard. She frantically tore open his blood-slicked clothes, wiping away her tears. She tried to focus her mana, but the spark died, total failure. She refused to let him die. Then old memories flooded her mind. Of their time together flooded her mind, his shouting, his awkward apologies, his constant protection. She had sworn to stay with him forever, driven by pure desperation. Her magic exploded outward, wrapping him in a blinding cocoon of light. 30 minutes later, the absurd reality of the situation finally came to light. Jard, his guard, and the completely fake assassin were all kneeling like naughty kids. They confessed to staging the entire stunt just to force her awakening. Hayes stared at them, completely unable to process such a psychotic move. Jard rubbed his neck, sheepishly explaining it was just a tiny scratch. And they had simply poured animal blood everywhere to make it look terrifying. He then made a pathetic attempt to smooth things over, asking how it felt to be a master healer. Honestly, what an insane way to get a promotion, but she was not having it. Hayes glared at them, coldly stating that she felt absolutely miserable, unable to believe her own friends would pull such a cruel stunt. How could they participate in something so twisted and completely heartless? The accomplices offered weak, regretful apologies, but the damage was done. Tears spilled, she cried out, declaring that she hated seeing him hurt. Because it literally broke her heart, she turned and bolted away, crying. Completely devastated, Jard called out, but she ignored him entirely. Then, funky eyebrows popped up, dryly observing that staging a fake murder was definitely not what he had in mind when he said to trust her. Either way, the nurturing project was mostly smooth sailing from here on. Meanwhile, in a far corner of the world, an imposing man blew a thick cloud of smoke right out of his mouth, an exhale looking almost like a dragon's breath. He quietly mused on how simple starting a war with Caribia would be, but figured it would only cause way too much useless bloodshed. All they really needed was to kill Jard. War is expensive, so why bother when it is simpler to send his top assassin, Shadow Sneak, to slip inside the manor, spy on him, and then finish Jard off. That was the cold, precise order he gave back in the manor, just as Jard and his hired actor were staging the whole awakening scene. The actual assassin, Shadow Sneak, saw his perfect chance to strike. He drew his blade, but immediately paused in utter confusion. Another killer was already attacking Jard. Shadow Sneak wondered who on earth this other group was that was also trying to end Jard's life. And just like that, the real assassin completely failed. Talk about incredibly bad luck. His perfect moment was ruined by a clueless, competing fake. Meanwhile, Reiki's must have spent an eternity trekking through the nightmare forest's soul-crushing snow. Seriously, what could ever possess a man to start a brutal trip like this? Especially when he could stay warm at home, enjoying the sweet peace of not freezing to death. Fortunately, he finally stopped, spotted by a local resident, who called him Baby Reiki's, a silly nickname that somehow survived 40 years of adulthood. This old man, clearly a fan of awkward reunions, invited him inside for hot tea, admitting it had been ages since he last saw Reiki's, mostly because Baby Reiki's was not a baby anymore. Reiki's replied with total dryness, saying that 40 years of life tends to do that to a person. The old man then got straight to the point, asking why Reiki's had traveled all the way to this deep end of the nightmare forest. Reiki's, while searching through his bag, admitted he had been looking for the old man all along, especially since a major new situation had popped up. He was the very first person Reiki's thought of. He pulled out the red medicine, telling the old man it was the actual cure for Rionella disease, suggesting he might need it while wandering this monster-filled woods. As Reiki's spoke, the old man quietly stirred the fire, admitting he had huge doubts since it was made by someone he considered a total rascal, but seeing it in person confirmed the cure rumors were absolutely true. Reiki's immediately defended his lord, claiming Jard had learned from past mistakes and was now a completely changed man. Plus, Jard approved of Reiki's taking this journey. The old-timer laughed like it was the funniest joke he had heard all year. He wondered why a lord would discard his loyal men for some random outsiders, which apparently seemed incredibly hilarious to anyone over 60. But Reiki's knew better. Lord Jard's forces were desperate for seasoned veterans, people who actually knew how to fight a war, especially with dark times fast approaching. Reiki's promised that the stubborn old man would change his mind once he saw how the land of Caribia had completely transformed, but of course, the old warrior remained entirely unconvinced and unimpressed. It was a depressing hint of what lay ahead, showing that things never in the entire history of the Nishu continent had such a destructive war broken out, turning lives to dust and rolling noble heads right into the ashes, making things like morality and basic ethics a total joke when you were just struggling to survive. Death was coming fast, riding on a headless horse. Yet, despite this nightmare, Lord Jard felt totally secure. And where was our hero right now? Hanging out at the local tavern, downing a surprisingly refreshing beer. While singing the praises of his territory's seafood, he was seriously running a desperate one-man tourism campaign to make Carabea's food sound way better than it actually was. Isabel was not buying it at all. To her, this was just a freezing cold land, relying entirely on fish. Because the only thing growing in their soil was pure misery. Jard had to admit she was right, sighing that he hoped his new fertilizer would finally work this time around. Naturally, Hayes was right there to cheer him up, confidently declaring that the fertilizer had to work, since it was crafted by her absolutely genius master, the sweet, delusional girl. But then tavern talk turned to the roads. Surprisingly, they were safe. This caught the attention of Hayes, drawing her eyes over to a group of hunters nearby. They were all in agreement about the roads being secure, thanks to Aki investing heavily after being robbed. Another hunter chimed in, saying Aki did it all under the orders of their great lord, and that he saw a bright future ahead under his leadership. He added that they had the cure for Rianella and plenty of other potions. Settling down in Carabea did not seem bad at all, and they could even move their entire Hunters Guild headquarters here. The girls were thrilled by all this local gossip, with Isabel admitting that keeping a low profile was indeed a smart plan, but Jard was silent, dead silent. She wondered what he was looking at, only to spot a very distracting pair of assets practically glowing right under the tavern light. They stood out like a true beacon of hope. The owner, a fiery redhead with some questionable fashion choices, ordered another round while her companion sat quietly next to her. She was a silent dark elf, eating bread and refusing as the redhead tried to force a drink. The elf calmly stated she needed her mind sharp, causing the redhead to sigh in disappointment. She complained that the elf needed to learn how to throw back a few drinks if she ever wanted to find a decent man, but the elf simply countered that she would just find a guy who doesn't drink, a perfect solution. But wait, it was not actually those assets that caught the eye of Jard. It was the redhead herself, Ella. She was a wildly crazy mercenary, known as a non-playable character who helped players in Paradiso for a price. The catch, zero loyalty. She would gladly sell out to the Demon King for a fat paycheck. Sitting quietly right next to her was K.H. Low, a secret non-playable character added in a massive hidden game patch 5 years before the war, if his memory served him right. And it usually did. Ella had absolutely no business being here right now. North and K.H. Low shouldn't be wandering around in the first place. Regardless, this was the absolute greatest opportunity he could ever ask for. He had just stumbled upon some of the most legendary figures in Paradiso's entire history in one spot. Bam, his talent-spotting radar flared to life, not wanting to waste another second. He bolted toward their table, leaving Hayes and Isabel completely stunned by their master's wild behavior. Honestly, they really should be used to his antics by now. Sidling up, Jard quickly offered his polite excuses for interrupting them, but before he could even speak, Ella shut him down instantly, saying she had zero interest. Younger guys, ouch, first real rejection since he arrived in Paradiso. Sure, his past life was full of shutdowns, but this one still hit him hard, rattling his soul and leaving him completely pale. He literally fainted. Right on cue, his loyal knight Hayes rushed to his defense, shouting for all to hear that Jard was the Lord of Carib, an actual viscount of this continent, demanding they show him proper respect. That quieted the entire tavern right down, but Ella was not having it, glaring back at the maid's bold attitude. She snapped back that she was a viscount herself, reminding everyone that Jard is not the only highborn around. Sensing trouble, Jard snapped out of his shock and quickly placed a calming, steady hand on Hayes. He politely asked if he could bother Ella with a request, promising that he would reward her very handsomely for her time. Realizing he was not some creepy 20-something, Ella apologized for assuming he was just trying to hit on her. Brushing it off, Jard accepted her apology but noticed all the whispering onlookers and suggested moving somewhere much more private. Up in his study, the three of them finally got down to real business. His offer was simple: 5,000 gold yearly, plus a mansion. In exchange for teaching his student, all he needed to do now was make a down payment and draw up a secure, notarized contract. Meanwhile, Khlo was totally bored, muttering that all humans seemed exactly the same to her anyway. So she would just follow Ella's lead, but before agreeing, Ella demanded to know why he trusted them with such a massive offer when they were strangers. Jard was blunt: he did not trust them, at least not yet, and cold hard cash was simply his best hook to keep them around. Deep down, he knew that if he threw enough gold at them, they would never walk away. Besides, he secretly remembered that Ella's difficult personality meant she was cursed to wander forever, eventually facing a cold, solitary death. And his gamble worked. Ella agreed, teasing that out of all his words, that brutal honesty was the most attractive thing he had said. She then demanded to see this mysterious kid worth such a massive fortune. Later that night, Jard sat in his study, writing down the wild events in his journal. Thrilled to finally have a proper teacher locked in for Lena. Usually, a day this intense would leave him completely drained, but Gorza's magical necklace kept his fatigue entirely at bay. Still, a far worse issue was creeping up. His memories of Paradiso future were slipping away. He had struggled to even recall Khlo's face earlier. And with his lands growing by the day, time to record everything was running out fast. He decided to leave a permanent record behind, a detailed journal written entirely in Korean, completely foreign tongue in this strange land that would function as a massive database holding secrets about their entire universe. He called it the Paradise. Note: the second Lena began her official training, Jard and Ella got a front row seat to absolute child torture, or as Ella put it, high-level personal growth. This poor girl was facing brutal military routines, usually saved for battle-hardened veterans who asked too many questions. There she was, happily dragging massive, heavy wooden logs with Khlo sitting comfortably on top. At this rate, Lena was bound to become a physical monster, which honestly seemed to be exactly what she wanted. Jard observed that Khlo was doing some serious heavy lifting too, handling the madness without even breaking a sweat, which drew a nod from Ella. She admitted Lena was not the only prodigy here, before sneering that whoever had trained the girl before was a complete embarrassment. She was confident she could take down that old teacher in 5 seconds flat, which was probably 5 seconds more than the guy earned. Poor Reiki's, at least he was worth a brief 5 seconds of her precious time. They watched Lena start another agonizing workout, sword held tight in one hand, shield raised, bracing for the coming magical barrage. Ella finally confessed something. She agreed that even without a proper master, Lena still had an incredibly high ceiling, thanks entirely to her new gear. The setup was basically a small square platform with 4 pillars, each one shooting a unique element of elemental magic. This was no happy accident though. Jard knew that, since the system lowers experience gains if you spam the exact same routine Firing 4 elements tricks the system into believing she is practicing 4 distinct skills, a brilliant shortcut that cheats the safety measures, showing the system is only as clever as its lazy creators. Ella was highly impressed by this trick and asked how he designed such a perfect custom routine for Lena. Keeping to his usual mysterious act, Jard offered a direct reply, saying this was just basic stuff from the Eastern continent. He was slightly shocked that she had read Lena so easily without relying on any special mind-reading abilities, but he shrugged it off quickly because the results spoke for themselves, and with war looming on the horizon, results matter far more than questions. Meanwhile, out in the fields, the Carib people worked tirelessly, but for once it did not feel like a miserable chore. They were actually excited about the upcoming harvest. A farmer noticed Fuzzy Eyebrows doing a routine inspection and decided to ask him about the overall state of the crops. Long story short, the custom fertilizer Jard made was an absolute miracle that had wiped out every single pest, and everything was going so perfectly that growers in the neighboring Rianella territory, where other Carib members had supposedly migrated, were completely desperate. The poor souls desperately wanted to learn their farming secrets. Rianella simply could not win, which greatly boosted the Carib ego. Knowledge, the local farmers were incredibly grateful to Fuzzy Eyebrows and Lord Jard, practically treating them like absolute saviors. Fuzzy Eyebrows, ever the humble gentleman, had the farmers blushing with sheer joy by thanking them for appreciating his and the Lord's hard work. He had nothing but endless praise. Suddenly, the system bell chimed and Jard received a notification. He had just earned 200 points for completing the Sincere Act quest, which only triggers when his people